Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It's Tuesday, March 18th, which means we are one day away from Notre Dame kicking off fall camp. That's Trevor Trowbridge. I don't know if you guys remember him. He and I did a show last week, and then he was out for the last week to the point where somebody's like, is Trevor still around? I'm like, no. I joked yesterday. I was like, no, he showed me up. He did really good the week I was gone, made people forget about me, so I got rid of him. I had to say, no, you can't be showing up to boss. But no, Trevor was sick last week. So we did our best to make do without him, but he is back. He's healthy. He's ready to rock and roll, ready to talk spring ball. You'll be at spring practice tomorrow, Trevor. So it'll be your first time attending spring practice. We're going to get the first 4 periods tomorrow, so we'll see a little bit. We'll have a little bit to see. We'll talk about on tomorrow's show. But, Trev, today you and I are going to preview spring practice for Notre Dame, and we've kind of been doing that for the last month and a half, and we'll continue to do that over the next couple of weeks to talk about spring practice. But we're going to look at it from a little bit of a different point of view, sort of a big picture right before spring. What are we looking for? What do we know about this team? What don't we know about this team? What are the objectives for Notre Dame this spring? And that's really going to be the focus of today as we get ready for Notre Dame to just really it's our first chance to see the 2025 team, sort of, because there's still some transfers are going to show up this summer and some newcomers will show up this summer. But this is our first chance to see that. First chance to see a lot of things. We're going to talk about all those. I'm excited about it. Trev, I know you're excited about it. I'm ready to rock and roll. But more importantly, man, I'm just good to have you back. Kind of down now a little bit this last week, but we're glad to have you back. You got sick at the right time. Better last week than this week, right? And better than the week before. Like, if you think about it, the week before I was gone, so I needed you to step up. This week it's spring practice, which you want to be at. You picked the right week in this time period to get sick, man. There's no doubt about it, because it was going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Shout out to the flu for picking the right time to come and bother me for about 5 days. But I'm happy to be back, man. I'm ready to get rolling on spring practice here. To me, I've always said this before I was with Irish Breakdown, when I was just a fan. I mean, it's spring practice for me kind of scratches that itch a little bit. You don't get all the questions answered that you want, but you get to see them out there on practice again. You get to see people running around. You get to see players flying around. And so I'm excited for it. And now this is going to be my first spring where I get to see things from the opposite end of the spectrum here. And I'm really excited to see that. But all in all, I'm just happy I don't have a fever anymore. I'm happy that I can, enjoy some of the warmer weather that's hopefully coming here soon. And I can move around without feeling like I'm going to pass out. So the flu is no joke. Hit me pretty hard, but I'm happy to be back, man. I'm ready.
Well, good, man. I'm excited about that. So let's get started here, Trev, on spring practice, and let's get started about kind of what we're going to talk about today, which is just sort of an overview of the spring for Notre Dame. And when you look at this team, obviously this is an important period for Notre Dame, but I think spring ball in general has taken on a different feel than it used to. Where in the past, I mean, your season ends after 13, 14 games for Notre Dame. Then there's this long period where, where you get to summer, you get to winter workouts, you get to these different parts of the season, and then there's this lull, and then and then you get this little brief period of spring ball, and then it's this other lull. Well, now it's like spring ball hasn't changed a whole lot, but it feels like the season ended so much later now than it normally does. It was 3 weeks, really, but it seems like it has. But you're now in this period where you say, well, this is such an important period of time for development for young players, and that's true. And this is a development time for whatever, this guy, that guy. But it's like they just had a whole extra month of practice, a whole extra month of the season, 3 whole extra games. I mean, if you think about it, Notre Dame played 3 extra games than what they normally play. 13 games is the most that Notre Dame's ever played in a season. This year they played 16. That's a whole different animal than what we've seen in the past, right? It's a whole different, it's 3 weeks. It's more than 3 weeks of practice because all those games were spaced out more than a week. You got all that extra time. That's 25% of a regular season that you just got extra work in compared to what you normally do. So now spring is a little bit different. You may rest guys when in the past you wouldn't rest guys. You say, hey, look, maybe you're going to give Emil Wagner a little bit of time off this spring. Where in the past, like, dude just started 1 year. Like, he's in a position battle. Like, he needs – but it's like, no, but do we really want to wear him down? And his season's only been over 2 months and, like, less than 2 months. I mean, last game was on January 20th, right? and spring practice starts on March 18th. That's not a lot of time. And then also the additional reps that came. Instead of getting 700-800 snaps, you got almost 1,000 snaps. So all those things factor in, and we're going to look at this team and decide like, hey, where is this team at? How are they handling? Like the first big picture question I have is, what's spring going to look like in this new era of 16 game seasons? And first game of the next season starts in August. I mean, what's this new era going to look like? That's the big thing for me, Trev, even before we get into some of the other specifics about, the objectives of spring, is what's this going to look like? What's the emphasis going to be? Is it going to be as aggressive as it's been in the past? Is it going to be as important when it comes to decisions being made as it was in the past? There's a lot of things that we don't know, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
I am too. We're entering into that realm of the new normal with the expanded playoffs and teams like Notre Dame, whose goal every single season is to play more than just 13, 14 games in an ideal world. And I think you're going to see a lot of players acting a little bit on a pitch count. I don't know if you're going to see guys like an Emil Wagner, players like a Jeremiah Love, guys like a Jaden Greathouse going 100% at 100% of the reps that you would normally see if it was a 12, 13 game long season. And so that's going to be interesting to see what that dynamic looks like. I'm going to be interested to see what it looks like, how practices are structured now, how physical do things get? Is stuff going to be more install walkthrough based? Because at the end of the day, football's a violent sport. Everybody knows that. You're still going to have some sort of combination of,
right.
I mean, we got to get the boys hitting today. But I'm sure that's going to take into account, because a lot of teams are kind of now, I think over the next couple of years, specifically this offseason and next offseason, experimenting a little bit with what that offseason looks like at the timing of starting of spring and what practices look like and how long they go. And I think it's all going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds. That's for sure.
It is. And we're going to not necessarily have all the answers because of how little we're going to be at practice, but we're going to do our best to try to talk to different sources and get some of that information to just kind of see how it goes. But there are certain things, Trevor, that no matter how much they change about the spring are important and need to be focal points of the spring, whether it is going to be a same as usual 15 practice spring or a shortened 15 practice spring. Maybe some of the practices aren't as long. Like the first practice is only going to be an hour compared to what it used to be. There's a lot of things that are going to be different, but no matter how it's structured, the main things that come out of spring that I believe are important for a football team are all still there. And that's something that we're going to focus on as we get into this first like kind of big picture segment of the show, is when you look at what are the priorities for the football team. What are the priorities for this team in camp or in this spring camp period? And the first one, and this is always, kind of my number one objective for spring, and it really starts in the winter. You see another big element in the spring, because it's one thing to do it in workouts and in meetings, but I really want to see it also happen in film sessions and now coach-led meetings and in practice, and that is leadership's got to be established. And what's interesting about this Notre Dame football team for 2025 is they didn't lose a whole lot just from a volume standpoint. When I look at some of these other teams and I see how many players they lost, starters, backups, I mean, like if you go to like Our Lads and you look at like the projected depth charts, and it's a somewhat useful tool. It's not always up to date, but it's helpful. And they'll show like first, second, third team, and then on the right they'll show all the guys that lost, the teams lost. And you'll go to some of these teams, and it's like the whole far right thing is just filled with dudes they lost, either the portal to the NFL. Notre Dame didn't actually lose a lot. I mean, on offense, they lost their quarterback, they lost two of their three starting receivers, but none of them were like dynamo players. And the guy that they got to replace them in the portal were more productive than they were. And then you get to the offensive line, you lost two guys to the portal who may not have even started next year. Defensively, you lose two really important D tackles, which is big. You lose a will linebacker, and you lose an All-American safety. You lose your nickel. That's five guys. You didn't lose a whole lot else. Well, you lost Benjamin Morrison. Yeah, but they already lost him. They played 10 games without Benjamin Morrison. Like, they already know what it was like without having him. And so you lost some good players, but you didn't lose a lot of volume. You only had 8 or 9 guys jump in the portal total. All of them were sort of expected to some degree. Then you look at it from a different standpoint. So volume, you compare what Notre Dame lost to like what Ohio State lost from their roster. You look at what Notre Dame lost to like what Oregon lost to their. It's night and day different. Ohio State's roster was way more depleted from guys going to the NFL than what Notre Dame's was, for example. But what's unique about Notre Dame, Notre Dame's team compared to past Notre Dame teams is even though the volume wasn't high, every single guy that we would consider a big-time leader as a veteran is gone. Like they lost all their captains. They're all gone, right? I mean, Riley was the only captain on offense. Riley Mills was a captain. He's out. Benjamin Morrison was a captain. He's gone. Xavier Watts was a captain. He's gone. And Jack Kaiser was a captain. He's gone. So leadership is a big thing here that has to be filled. And it's always important. There's certain things you can do as a coach to manufacture leadership, but to a large degree, I say this every year, Trevor, it's got to be player-led. It's got to be organic. And this is a time when you learn that. So leadership has to be established for your team as a whole on each side of the ball and then each position room. And the spring is a big time for that because if you aren't working on establishing leadership until July, in August when you show up for fall camp, it's way too late. It needs to be established before then, and the spring is a big time for that. And that's something that I'm most going to be looking forward to hearing about and to a degree seeing, but also hearing about from this period of time is who steps up as the leaders of this football team, because that's going to go a long way towards determining the mentality, the culture, the attitude of this football team.
It's ripe for the taking, that's for sure, because you talk about the players that aren't on campus yet. The guys like Malachi Fields, who was voted a team captain by his teammates at Virginia in 2024. You start talking about how Notre Dame might not have lost the volume, but the impact of what they lost is great. Lost all 5 of their captains, most of their leaders on defense, a lot of the vocal leaders on defense. But based on what we heard about from last spring, there's players that now have the opportunity to elevate and take that next step and not just be that person for the position room or just the younger guys. Now they can do it for the entire side of the ball or the entire team. Guys like Jaden Greathouse, guys like Adon Schuler. That's what I'm also excited to see in this spring is can you take that next step and be that guy where, to me, when you look at the impact of a leader, yes, it's the people around you on your side of the ball, but when you know you have a good leaders, when you have guys like, you heard defensive players talk about it last year, like outside linebackers. There'd be guys like Jaden Osbury talking about how, hey, Riley's that guy. He kind of brings us together as a team. It's like that's an impact. That is an impactful leader. You have guys like Emil Wagner talking about, hey, Zero on that side of the ball. I mean, that guy's a leader. Yeah. He brings us together. We rallied around him. That is what I'm also looking to see in the spring, because that is the one thing that's missing. We can talk about how much talent this team has all the live long day, but having that, I don't want to say proven leadership.
You need an established leader in your room. That's what you're saying. And we don't know who that's going to be. We're going to talk about some players we think that's going to be, but the reality is like last year, for example, two of the guys you just talked about. You talked about Riley Leonard is who you're talking about, correct? Mm-hmm. And then Xavier Watts, because you say Riley, I want to make sure that he wasn't talking about Riley Mills. About Riley Leonard, for example. Riley Leonard wasn't a guy that was out there in the spring practicing. But what we kept hearing was he was always kind of working. He was always kind of, he was with the guys. He was doing this, he was doing that. And you could just immediately feel like this guy stepped in and he was a leader right away. And his personality was infectious and it was simple. It was easy because you knew that's just who Riley Leonard is. Yeah. With Xavier Watts, however, that's not naturally who he is. He had to go out there and say, hey, look, this is what the expectations are of me. I have to step up my game from a leadership standpoint. And I think doing that, and he did that brilliantly, and I think it made him a better football player. because he couldn't just do his job anymore. He now had to make sure everybody knew what the expectation and what the standard was. And to see that was very encouraging for me, to see that, because it's not naturally who he is. He naturally did it. It wasn't like Marcus Freeman sat down and said, listen, Xavier, I need you to be a captain this year. He knew, and maybe Coach Freeman had that conversation with him, but I can promise you that was part of the thing Xavier knew he was getting into when he decided to come back. I assure you he knew that was going to be part of the expectation when he chose to come back. And so some guys, it's just natural. It's going to be no problem for Drake Bowen and Don Schuler to step into a leadership void on defense. It's going to be no problem for Jaden Greathouse to step into a leadership void on offense. And I would argue the same thing about Jeremiah Love. Who is that guy on the offensive line? You mentioned Emil Wagner. Is he that guy for Notre Dame this spring? Is it Billy Schrouth? Who's going to be that? Is Eli Raridan ready to kind of be that leader in the room? You're now the vet, my man. Yes, Kevin Bauman is around too, but you've played a whole lot more than Kevin Bauman because of the injuries. And I would argue that no position has a bigger question mark from a leadership standpoint than the D-line. You lost 2 All-American D tackles. Like I'm on the board today, and I keep reading these posts about people just complaining over and over and over about D tackle. D tackle's a major problem. I'm like, did you guys watch this defense the last 2 years? Like maybe in the future, but they've been pretty good there. And then you start thinking about it, but then you're like, okay, but next year those guys aren't there, Brian. So like maybe there's some legitimate concerns there, and we don't know who that playmaker is going to be. I'm like, yeah, it's a fair point. But even more so, we don't know who the leaders are going to be in that room. Jordan Botelho is not going to practice this spring. Does he step into a leadership role after the career he's had? I don't know. Is Josh Burnham ready to be that guy? Is Gabriel Rubio better? He wasn't even on the team last spring because of some certain issues. There's not that natural, oh, yeah, that guy's going to be a leader at D tackle outside of maybe Donovan Heinisch. Maybe. I don't know Boubacar Traore well enough to know if he does or doesn't have that type of personality. I don't know him very well. Does he provide that? There's just what about the newcomers? Does Jared Dawson bring some of the leadership that Notre Dame got from the portal last year with Riley Leonard and Jordan Clark and guys like that? We don't know. We're going to find that out. So I think to a certain degree, Trevor, the thing I like and I'm encouraged by about this spring, but now we have to see it play out, is I'm a little bit more encouraged this offseason than I was last offseason about who that's going to be. We didn't necessarily know at certain positions, especially on offense, who the leaders were going to be. We had this conversation about who the captains were going to be last year. And we're like, okay, well, probably Riley Leonard. But after that, it's like, Jaden Thomas is kind of a leader, but he's not even a starter for you. You didn't really have that natural leadership because you were so young. Now it's like, okay, I don't know if there's going to be a leader at quarterback from the standpoint of the best quote unquote leader of the room may not even start in Steve Angeli. If he starts, then your leadership thing is kind of figured out. Can Kenny and CJ, if they win the starting job, provide that leadership? And my answer is, well, I don't know that I need them to. I just need them to do their job. That just naturally doing that will be leading. But you're in a position where if you'd have had a young guy starting last year, that would have been very problematic. I think it's a big reason why Mark Freeman went to the port, because you didn't have a lot of natural leadership. This year you do. Jaden Greathouse has established himself. He started doing that last spring as a leader. Jeremiah Love started showing that last year. Now Emil Wagner and Billy Schrouth have a year under their belt. Emil just strikes me when I listen to him talk and I see him get interviewed and you see how he conducts himself. You're just like, yeah, I kind of see him as like a future captain type of guy. He just strikes me as like that Mike McGlinchey type. That's the guy that gets up there and gives the intellectual talk in front of the room and that kind of thing, where Quentin Nelson's the grinder, go get it. Maybe that's Jagasol and Schrouth, who knows? But, receiver, we have that. Plus you're adding Malachi Fields in the fall, who was a captain at Virginia. But for right now, for the spring, who else steps up in that role? It's going to – I think that the options are a little bit more clear now. And unlike last year, a lot of the options are your best players. And Drake Bowen, Don Schuler, Jeremiah Love, Jaden Greathouse. But there's got to be some others, though. Does Christian Gray kind of step into that? Does Leonard Moore, even as a sophomore, start to show some of that in that room? The cornerback room is the one I might have a big question, maybe the biggest question about after the D-line is the cornerback room because it's so young. I mean, Christian Gray's now the vet in that room. Think about that, but this is where you start to see it, Trev. And also it's the two types of leaders. There's the vocal guys, and then there's the lead by how you go about your business. Some of those guys are both. Don Schuler is going to be both. Drake Bowen's both. I think Jaden Greathouse is both. Jeremiah Love, definitely lead by example guy. How much is he going to kind of get up in front of the room when booties need chewed out? I don't know about that, but who are those? There's different types of leadership, and all that's got to be established. And if it doesn't get established by the end of spring, as a coach, you start getting a little bit worried. You do.
The cornerback room is very intriguing to me, especially a guy like Leonard Moore, because you start talking about how he still needs to progress. He still needs to have a good spring. He still needs to hone in some skills. What he did last year was fantastic, but I don't believe that he is a finished product by any means. And you don't want to burden somebody heading into their true sophomore season who is technically still a freshman right now with the duties of like, hey, you could be a captain. Do I think he could be? Absolutely. Do I expect it to be this year? I probably not.
And who's that? Talking about Leonard Moore?
Leonard Moore.
Yeah. I don't care about captain. Just so we're clear. When I say leader, I'm not talking about captain. Like it's leadership can be something that you establish without being like Drake Bowen became a leader of that defense second half of the year. Jack Kaiser was the leader of the defense. He was the captain. He was the guy he was the emotional captain. But Drake Bowen was when the whistle started to kick the game off, that was your leader on defense. That was the guy that got everybody lined up. That was the guy that, kind of did all that. Well, now it's like, okay, now I need you to take that next step into you're doing it off the field. But that's what it encourages me about that is you don't have to be a captain to establish that leadership role. We saw that from Don Schuler in practices. He'd be like barking at other guys, like getting them lined up. And you're just like, dude, you haven't even started a game yet. And you're already like telling other dudes what to do. That's just who Adon is. That's his personality. That's the big thing, Trev, is there's more of those type of guys on this roster than maybe they've had in past years. When I look around the roster, there's more of those. Now, I wish there was, I don't know who that guy is in the D line. I don't know who that guy is in the O line. But when I look everywhere else, there's guys that you point to and you're like, okay, yeah, that guy's got some of that. Like Aeneas Williams, if he's a guy that you can view as being a leader of that room someday. Even if he's not your number one back, he's the guy that kind of leads that room. You look at different players that you say, okay, that's a guy that I think is going to step up and kind of be that type of guy. But it gets established this spring. And part of that too, Trev, is, and the next part of that is from the leadership, you start to see a culture get established of your football team. And what do we mean by when we say culture? When I refer to culture from a football standpoint, I'm not talking about, like things movie is part of our modern culture, the music we listen. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about what's your DNA as a football team? What are the things that you believe in? What are the things that you buy into? What are the sacrifices you're willing to make? What is your emphasis as a football team? Are you one of those teams that we look around the country and we see that you got a bunch of individuals that are focused on themselves and it's hard for them to become a team? I look at Ole Miss last year and I'm like, how does a team with that much talent lose 3 football games? Because I don't think the culture was established in a way where they were all truly bought into the team goal. When I look at look at Ohio State last year, Notre Dame, for example. Ohio State had a lot of highly ranked guys, highly ranked recruits, future high draft picks, a lot of guys that could focus a lot of guys getting paid a lot of money. We talk about how much money Ohio State's players got paid and all that kind of stuff. And there were times throughout the year where you could just see the culture wasn't really solid the way that it needed to be. But it started to kind of grow later in the year. They went through some tough times. And once they had that loss to Michigan, it was either going to make or break that football team. And we talked about this going into the playoffs. They're either going to fold because of this or this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to them. I believe that's exactly what we said going into the playoffs. But because the culture of the team was such that at the end of the day, for all the I's and the me's, there were still a lot of guys that came back for a bigger goal, a bigger picture, a bigger objective. And that kind of rallied that group together where it was no more about, hey, guys, no more about what yours and you get yours and whatever we got to do to go win this football game, we're going to go do it to win this football game. And that leadership kind of carried the day and took them over the top. We saw that with Notre Dame last year after the Northern Illinois loss. A lot of teams would have folded after that. But Notre Dame's leadership came together and said, and we even said this at the time, like, who are the leaders? Where's the leaders? Who's going to step up and lead this football team? Well, we saw that. It was Riley Leonard. It was Xavier Watts. It was Riley Mills, who, kind of started really taking his game to another level. The leadership said, no, guys, this isn't going to be us. We're not going to, nope, this isn't going to define us. We're better than this. We know who we are. Let's get back to being that way. And that leadership carried the day for both of those teams. And it was a very different journey to get to that game, but that's who they were, and that's what they became. And that's why those are the two teams at the end of the day that were playing for the championship. So the culture, the leadership leads into what your culture is. What do you prioritize? What are your most important things as a football program? Are you a team that believes in toughness? That gets established the offseason. Are you a team that believes in sacrifice? That gets established this offseason. Are you a team that knows what it's like to overcome adversity? That didn't get started in August for Notre Dame last year, Trev. That got started in the offseason. That's another thing, is if these two things don't kind of get established now, it becomes a problem really for the entire season. It doesn't get fixed in August. It just doesn't.
This is a huge one for me. And reason why I say that is last year, this team really struggled with success, really struggled handling success. And there's countless different examples of that. I mean, you win at Texas A&M, you drop your home opener to Northern Illinois. Then you can start talking about, hey, you go and you beat the brakes out of Purdue, you're back at home the next week, you struggle against Miami of Ohio for the first half. You fast forward later into the season, defense struggled against USC. Chalk it up to a bad day. I'm cool with that. Fast forward more down into the postseason. You finally get the monkey off your back. You get your first major bowl win against a really good Georgia team down in the Sugar Bowl. And then 7 days later, you come out against Penn State and you struggled. Didn't really look focused. Get into halftime, they were able to lock in, look like a completely different football team in the second half. You don't have that leadership that's there right now to kind of correct you and say, hey, can we lock in now, please? It's time to go. Excuse me. So for me, it's going to be interesting to see this spring. What is this leadership going to look like? Because a lot of the positives from last season were a lot of young talent had to play. Now they come back a lot more experienced. Now the question is, how do they come back? Do they come back and hang their hat on, we just had the most wins in a Notre Dame season in school history, and we won back-to-back New Year's Six Bowls, and we made it to the Natty, and I'm a true freshman now. I mean, imagine what is that going to look like? Is it going to be more that now that they have a lot of success and people are talking about Notre Dame again and Notre Dame's back in the limelight? Or is it going to be, we did all that work just to come up short in the national championship game? It's time to go. It's time to work that much harder. We've seen it now. We've gotten a taste of it now. Now we want the whole meal, and so that's what I'm interested to see, how this culture is going to be established. That is the one thing that you talked yesterday, what you were nervous about as far as what that competition is going to be breeding. That's my nerves going into this spring. I think they're capable of doing it. We've seen them capable of handling success. But the one fear for having such a young team is that I think it's gone. I think that they're going to overcome it because you have your guys, your leaders, like a Jaden Greathouse after the national championship said, I'm ready to get back to work. I'm ready to get back to the bend and start grinding today. I never want to feel this way again. Does that emulate with the rest of the team?
And I don't know if you saw that workout video that had Jeremiah Love in it. He's been working.
Yeah.
He looks like, okay, that cat he's putting on a little extra armor, that was good to see. But you're absolutely right, Trevor. It's what's your mentality. But now we get to start to see it. We get to start to see if that's actually going to be the case. We think it's going to be good. It's kind of like what I said yesterday when I was talking to Sean, talking about the quarterback decision. Is I think Marcus Freeman understands what has to go into this decision, but I also am still a little bit haunted by the last 30 years of Notre Dame football, where a lot of times we haven't seen that kind of manifest the right way. And so even though I have faith in it, I still have that, man, I just, I don't know. And that's what the spring is, Trev, because this is our first chance to actually get a glimpse of, okay, I'm seeing it now. I'm seeing that they're going to get there. And of course, a big part of it is no matter how much contact you have, Trev, competition is big. And Marcus Freeman talks about this all the time. This is our first chance to see competition. And what Trev and I are talking about here is not quarterback battle. We'll talk about that in a minute. We're not talking about who's going to start at this position. It's just how competitive are you as a football team? Like, nothing gets me more excited than watching spring practice, watching the offense and the defense genuinely talk trash at each other because they want to win so bad that they're just going right at their teammates because they just have that fire desire to. I know it's March, but I'm taking a rep and I want to beat you. To see those guys competing against each other. It's not the competition of C.J. Carr against Kenny Minchie and Steve Angeli and Blake Hebert and Anthony Rizak. It's more so I want to see that competition between Leonard Moore and Jaden Greathouse. I want to see that competition between Bryce Young and Emil Wagner. I want to see Charles Jagasaw going against Gabriel Rubio in a one-on-one and how the fire those two have to beat each other. Like, those are the things that I want to see, that competition of, man, we are out here to put in that work. And again, these all things like leadership leads to culture. Culture leads to this. They're all building blocks, Trev, towards sort of the personality of your football team. And you ask, how can the 2015 team and the 2017 teams be as good as they were? But that 2016 team right in the middle was so bad. Poor leadership, terrible culture, no drive to be the best you can be. Like, that was the DNA of that team. The next year's team with mostly the same players, completely different DNA. Why? Better leadership, better culture, and then obviously far more competitive team. That was, yes, to a degree, there was some there were some coaching decisions that were made to bring in new coaches, but a lot of that was really player driven. It was Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey saying, yeah, that ain't going to happen again. It was just those it was Drew Tranquil and Tavon Coney being like, yeah, that's not going to happen again. And you had that player-led aspects that led to that team being super competitive. And I remember 2018, just watching in the spring of 2018, we knew something big was about to happen that fall when we watched Miles Boykin every day in practice just destroy Julian Love in practice. And you're just like, we know that guy over there, number 27, is really good. So if he's doing that to him in practice, then we know. And then Miles, you could just see the confidence in Miles growing every day that he was putting in work against Julian. And this isn't a knock on Julian Love. It's just like, dude, he's 5'10 and a half, and Miles Boykin is 6'4. And Miles was finally playing to his potential. You just knew this fall is going to be a lot of fun, because remember, Miles hadn't done anything up to that point in time until the bowl game, what was it? The Champs Sports Bowl, right? Or no, it was the what was the Citrus Bowl? Citrus Bowl, yeah. He hadn't done anything in his career in a meaningful. I mean, he had played against Miami, Ohio here, but he hadn't done anything meaningful in his career until then. And then that was a launching point, and then you just saw it grow all spring. And it was, where did we see that? In those competitive periods where they were going at each other. That's where a team is made. Hey, look, you want your receivers to be better? Make sure your DBs are going at them and vice versa. And I remember talking to a defensive coach. So before this past season, I believe, talking about how much more better the competition was in that room with the receivers. Those are all things that you saw, and you're just like, they just battle more. They get after it more. Like, I don't know how good they're going to be, but those kids compete like crazy, and that makes us better. And those things are all important. We remember hearing from Mike Elko in 2017, talking about how, hey, we're getting ripped up now, but he's like, it's because of that line. But going against that line, I remember he called them, I think, like human lie detectors. If you don't bring it, that offensive line in 2017 they're going to expose you. But going against Quentin Nelson and Alex Bars and Mike McGlinchey and Sam Mustipher and Robert Hainsey and Tommy Kramer every day made that D-line so much better. And those are the things that you look for, Trev. And I can assure you that every great team I've coached on, there was a lot of times you'd get to Saturday and you're like, this is the easy part. Because we were going at each other all week. This is the easy part. Season was the easy part because we were going at each other all camp, and we knew we were going to face any DBs more athletic than Rob Rodriguez and the guys we had to face in practice. And those are things that you look at, and that's right. That's one things I love about the depth of this team is because you can actually have that type of competition. But that's another part of this spring that we're going to find out. Does this team compete the way? Because you start to see things from past teams, traits that kind of carry over. We saw it in 12, we saw it in 15, 17, 18, and maybe not so much in 19 or whatever. And you start to see those, and spring is when you start to see those. And a lot of it comes from how do these guys go at each other? Because if they're going at each other that hard, they're going to go hard at the other team. And that's a big part of the spring for me as well, Trev.
Competition's huge. It breeds success, and it elevates everybody around you, not just the person that you're going against. If you're a true competitor and you really strive to be the best version of yourself and you truly attack spring wanting to get better, there's other members within your position group that say, oh, yo, Jaden Greathouse is bringing it today. I need to step it up. Oh, man, Emil Wagner's bringing it today. I need to step it up. As another member of the offensive line, not just – one-on-ones, inside run, RVA, 7-on-7, not just stuff like that, but that's what I love about competing. And it all ties into the culture of the team, the leadership there. That's more the leading by example. But if you are a true competitor, you're not going to sit back and let somebody be like, oh yeah, like they're kind of balling out today. I'm going to let them have their day. It's like, well, no, let me get up there. Let me take my rep. It's time for me to compete. I want to show what I can do. And that's how teams continue to elevate. And then when you start talking about the depth of teams, man, you want to talk about why Alabama went on the run that they did. It's because a lot of their second stringers were better than the competition they were facing on Saturdays. At one point in time, Trayvon Diggs and Pat Surtain were the scout team corners that their starting receivers were going against. That's crazy. But Notre Dame is working to that. That's what's crazy. In the fall, There were teams in the past where Notre Dame has a defensive back unit of Mark Zachary and Dallas Golden and Cree Thomas and Carson Hobbs. You're like, yo, the starters are going to be pretty good this year. They're going to be fighting to get on the field because of Christian Gray and Leonard Moore. And you're going to have these starting wide receivers every single day in practice battling against, potentially Jadon Blair and Mark Zachary and Dallas Golden and all them. But in the spring, I'm really excited to see what the competition's what it's going to look like, because it's the players' first real chance to go out and compete since January 20th. And yeah, you compete in the winter workouts. We've seen the videos of tug of war, but it's different when you strap the pads on.
Yeah.
When you get that helmet and shoulder pads on, it's different. It's very different, and I can't wait.
Yeah. Well, you talk about that competitiveness, Trev, and you start mentioning like guys like Mark Zachary, and I was thinking about this. I've said this before, I believe, and sometimes I don't know if I said something on the air or in a conversation, so I'll repeat it. But 4 or 5 years ago, we're talking about Aeneas Williams being a starting running back at Notre Dame. We're talking about Preston Zinner maybe stepping into a starting role. We're talking about, man, I can't wait to see Bodie Cahoon in year 2. And man, what's Carson Hobbs going to be like now that he's a sophomore? These guys are as second and third year players be going into starting jobs on a lot of past Notre Dame teams that were pretty good.
Yeah.
And now it's like, what happened to Brendan Vernon? Is he not as good as we thought? Well, maybe it's just maybe, but maybe it's also, but look what he's competing against. They're pretty loaded. And that's kind of fun to think about as well. You talk about that competition, and it's like, you're not going to have Malachi Fields this spring. You're not going to have Jordan Faison all the time. You're not going to have Will Pauling all the time. Man, that's going to be tough. But you're still going to have Jaden Greathouse, KK Smith, Micah Gilbert, Cam Williams, Logan Saldate, Elijah Burris, Scrap Richardson, and Jerome Bennett Jr. Like, you're good. Leo Scheidler, who's one of my favorite walk-ons. Like, that kid is really talented for a walk-on. He was a starter on special teams for them last year, number 82. Like, that kid is as athletic as guys that I've seen get reps for Notre Dame in the last 20 years at wide receiver. Like, and that's the thing is like, yeah, the depth chart's thin at corner, but it's like, it's still Christian Gray, Leonard Moore, Carson Hobbs, and Cree Thomas. It's still going to be pretty good. And that's what kind of has me fired up, Trev. And then also seeing guys in new positions, how do they compete? How does Ben Minnick handle playing the nickel, along with Devontae Smith? If Jaden Greathouse plays more outside, how's he going to do? And that kind of leads into the next part, Trev, which is, this is a time where as a team, you really focus on those areas for improvement. You know, you can't, you don't want to be stuck in a situation where we're in August and September. You're like, man, we need to really improve our third down package. You hope that you can, because compared to last year, you start doing that stuff now. And it's not so much that we're going to focus on all the things that need to be improved upon, but just like examples offensively for Mike Denbrock, this is going to be a huge period to work on your pass game. Because you're not going to be, going to, you got these new quarterbacks. You know what you can do running the football. There's periods where the offensive line can go work on their run game. But what were two of the biggest issues of the offense last year? They weren't a dynamic throwing team, and they weren't very good in pass pro. And you get 15 practices to work big time on that. And you can work on the run game stuff when you are able to do a little bit more bang bang in the fall. This is now a great time to really to work on your third down packages, as we mentioned. It's a great time to, hey, we want to do more, less 12 personnel, more 11 personnel. So what do we got to do to make adjustments in the run game structurally with those 11 personnel groups, maybe to our run game? We've got to work on doing this. We've got to work on doing that. Now's the time to work on that stuff and improve that stuff. And defensively, it's, hey, look, our run D's got to get better. So let's identify the areas we got to get better and then try to work on that. So, for Al Washington, it's like, hey, man, we really got to work a ton this spring on better gap discipline or block destruction, moving our feet through contact, resetting the line. The linebackers may say, hey, we got to really make sure that our fits are sound. Tackling technique is something you can work on a ton in the spring. It's not that you're tackling a ton, you're working on the technique of tackling a lot. And just being better finishers is something that its defense can certainly do. But this is the time for that, Trev. This is the time when a lot of those things get focused on. This is a big fundamental time. You can't, it's a great talking point, but when you're in the middle of the season, you can't focus every day on, okay, guys, let's make sure we spend the next 30 minutes doing a better job of getting off of the ball. There always has to be that improvement, but you've got to be focusing on, when I'm getting ready for a game as a receivers coach, yeah, there's fundamental things we work on every day, but we got a very limited time for that. Then it's, let's do install about how we're going to attack this specific defense we're facing and work on this new play call that we've put in for this specific defense. You don't have a lot of time for that. Hey man, we're just going to break this thing down and just really get to the core principles here. That's what the spring is for. And I hope that that's something that we see a lot more of from the coaching staff. And that's a fun time, Trev, is you always wonder, man, why are they throwing this much in the spring? Are they going to throw the ball a lot more next year? No, that area needs more improvement, so it's getting more attention. And also, if you're not going to be as physical in the spring because of the longer season, this is not the time to say, hey, let's really work on our power run game. You know what I mean? Because you're not getting a great look. That's for the fall, and it doesn't mean you don't work on technique and foot drive and hand placement and all those things. But again, that's a fundamental thing, not so much hey, we're establishing a physicality of the run game in the spring. It may not be where you're at because, you're probably not going to have your starting offensive line play a single snap together. If Ashton Craig's going to start for your football team this spring, he ain't playing. So that's what I love about this time too, Trev, as a football coach. Is it's a great, let's get back to basics to a degree and really focus on some of the things that we feel we need to be better at compared to last year, or we need to make sure we're focusing on this because we did lose so and so and so and so. We got to make sure these young bucks are prepared to handle the things they're going to need to do. And that's that should be, as a coach, that should be the period you love, man. If you don't have a passion for teaching the foundational, the fundamentals and just teaching kids the game at that foundational level, then man, what are you doing? You need to go coach in the NFL. This is where you got to have, especially with so many young guys on campus now. Yeah. And you've got so many transfers that, hey, just because a guy played D tackle somewhere else doesn't mean he knows the technique that you want, because it's not taught the same way everywhere. And that's what is a great period. And then the last one, Trev, and this is the most fun. This is our first crack at seeing the position battles that are actually the specific position battles that are going to rage. And I know that quarterback's going to get the most attention, but it's not the only one, man.
Sure isn't. Quarterback is going to draw a lot of attention, rightfully so. It's the first true quarterback competition under Marcus Freeman. Really the first true competition at quarterback that Notre Dame has had since 2016? Really?
Yeah, we debated that yesterday. Maybe 2018 because but we knew Brandon was going to start the season at quarterback. We just didn't know if he was going to finish the season. So I don't, but Ian had to play well in order to position himself to then take over for Brandon. So being reserved 2018, and then before that 16, and then before that, it's like, I don't know, 2011. I mean,
yes.
Tommy and Dane, right? Before that, it was like there was no competition with Jimmy. Evan Sharpley was never going to start over Jimmy Clausen for any period of time. You talk about how far this program has come. In 2007, you had true freshman Jimmy Clausen, Demetrius Jones, Zach Frazier, and Evan Sharpley at quarterback. It's a whole different animal now, man. It's a whole different animal now. It's a whole different animal.
No, it is.
But yeah, but even there, it's like, I think the competition at quarterback, Trevor, is going to have an impact on a lot of things we already talked about: leadership, culture, competition. It's just like it's going to have a big say. It really is. It really is. And like you said, quarterback competitions. We both played quarterback. Quarterback competitions can make or break a team's locker room, and not by who wins, but how it's handled. The 2016 quarterback competition was not handled well. Whether you think the right guy started or not, the reality is it was handled in a way where it fractured the locker room. And that played a role and that's not on Deshaun or Malik. That part of there's other things that are on them. That Deshaun was just a bad leader and just in all the things. So about Malik didn't handle what happened well. That created problems. But that all lays at the feet of Brian Kelly, who put them all in that situation where that team really struggled. The quarterback competition created a void in leadership. It created a cultural problems in the locker room. The notion of being in a true competition was just out the window because everybody that paid attention knew it wasn't a real competition, and it fractured that team. And that's why a team that with those type of players went 4-8. And then there's other times when a quarterback battle can galvanize a football team because, boy, these guys are all getting after it, and we have confidence in whoever the coaches pick because they're all leading, they're all working hard, they all have great attitudes, and we're going to find out who that guy is. And that's partly on the players and partly on the coaches, but it'll have a big say in that. But it's these other ones that we're not talking about as much that I find interesting, Trev. But I do wonder if position battles mean as much nowadays than they used to outside of quarterback and the offensive line. Because teams play so much depth now, I don't know that position battles outside of the O-line and quarterback really have as much impact. Like they don't mean as much as they used to because it's like whoever starts between Bryce Young and Josh Burnham, it's irrelevant because they're both going to play and play a lot. They're both going to be very important players. Does it matter if Bubakar's on the field first or Jordan Pateljo's on the field first or Junior Chamaka's on the field first? They're all going to play. Does it matter if Donovan Heinisch is on the field first or Jared Dawson's on the field first? Not really. They're both going to play. And so maybe corner, maybe is the other one.
Just about to say corner, probably. Just because, and maybe it's just specific to Notre Dame now. I don't know how many other teams routinely will rotate their field and boundary guys off, but I'm just looking at Notre Dame sample size, and really since 22, they haven't had corners that they would just rotate. I mean, I don't know who you're going to put on the field instead of Cam Hart and Ben Morrison in 22 and 23, and then even in 23, Christian Gray snuck on there a couple times. Made impact plays while he was out there.
Jaden Mickey played.
Jaden Mickey played, but it's not enough for it to be a true,
they were breather rotation players. That's what they were. They weren't like the D tackle rotation was, the D end rotation was, and especially the linebacker rotation this year. Where it's like, none of those guys are giving Drake Bowen a breather. They're not giving Jack Kaiser a breather. They're on the field to make plays. Not hopefully you don't get gashed while the starter's catching his breath. I mean, that's kind of what it was. You know what I mean? It's like,
honestly,
like running back. It's like it used to be where like you'd bring a guy in for a series to spell the starter so he doesn't wear down. Now it's like, crap, they brought 24 in. It's like It's like if you're a middle linebacker, number 20 comes in, you're like, crap, I might have to go out wide and try to cover this guy now. It's just it's a different animal than it used to be, man. At a lot of positions where it used to be like you won a starting job, you were the starter. And then the other guy just kind of came in to spell you. It's different now. And that's why I say that the competitions for 2 and 3 a lot of times are even more important or impactful than 1 and 2. They're not as sexy. If we did a show, like we're going to talk about all the position battles for the 2 and 3 spots, like nobody'd watch. But I'm like, yeah, but those are going to have a lot more of an impact than who's going to be going for the number 1 at that position, because we know the guy that's number 1 is going to play, but who's going to play with him? I remember watching in 2022, there was a couple games, Trev, where they would bring in the backup D-line. And I never understood why Al Golden did this with that team. They'd bring in the backup D-line, and you could almost count almost every time when he put in the entire – he would like mass substitute the D-line. And it seemed – it's just how I perceived it, but it seemed like every time he did that, the other team would go right down the field and move the ball and score. And you're just like, dude, I know what you're trying to do, but you got to mix and match this a little bit. Like was it 2018, they would start Jerry Tillery and John Bonner. And then the rest of the game, Jerry Tillery was always on the field with Myron Tagovailoa-Mosa for the most part. And then John Bonner was usually on the field with, no, it was the other, excuse me. Jerry was on the field with Kurt Heinisch, who was the nose. And then Bonner, who was the starting nose, would be on the field a lot with Myron Tagovailoa-Mosa. There'd be times when the two starters would be on the field together and times when the two younger guys were on the field together. But for the most part, you had that mix and match there. Well, last year that wasn't an issue. There'd be times where they'd have the backup D-line in the game and then one or two of the backup linebackers, and you almost didn't notice it. A, because they did it so much, but B, because when they were bringing in backups, those backups were pretty flippin' good, and they were impact players, and that's a big difference in this football team now, just from 3 years ago in Marcus Freeman's first year, where when Isaiah Foskey went off the field, there was a big drop-off between Isaiah Foskey and whoever was coming in to replace him. And that was true on the O-line, corner, D-line, I mean, all those positions. Now it's kind of like, all right, I don't care. I mean, Viper this year, it's like you're going to have Jordan Patelho, Boubacar Traore, Junior Tilamaka, and Logan Thomas. I'm good. Well, what about this guy? I'm good. I'm good with all those guys in different capacities. So that's what kind of has me fired up about this team. But those position battles, though, Trev, they're going to start now and they're going to carry into the fall in a lot of cases. They're going to have a lot of say on what this team looks like. Quarterback obviously being one, but a lot of these offensive line, these position battles could determine, like we could say, okay, right now I anticipate Anthony Knapp being the left tackle and Charles Jagusah being the right guard. And we'll talk a little bit about right guard here later. But what if Sullivan Absher's so good that you're like, dude, he's got to play? Well, you're not going to play him over Jagusah because that all of a sudden impacts the tackle position. And you see what I'm like, all these, you could say, hey, look, we're going to start Charles Jagusah left tackle. But let's say Anthony Knapp has a monster breakout spring or Gerby Lambert has a big breakout spring. You're like, dude, we got to get that guy on the field too. So we're going to move him inside the guard. There's all these things that can happen that are sort of a domino of somebody showing themselves. And the spring is a lot of times when that starts to happen. It's like this guy starts to show off like, uh-oh, this guy's got a little something, and then it carries over and bleeds into the fall.
I like it because it's about building out rotations. Now in this day and age of college football where you're playing 14 to 16 games in any given season, you're having multiple bye weeks and you have conferences like the SEC where it just feels like the majority of all their schedules are tough. Notre Dame's schedule is getting more tough. Ohio State opens up their season against Texas, and you're having to play more and more people. You're having to reach farther and farther down onto the depth chart. And so that is what I'm excited to see about some of these position battles is it's not necessarily who's going to be. Yes, you can still look at it for depth chart purposes of who's going to be number 2, who's going to be number 3. I look at it as building out the rotation because now you start looking at the offense and defense and it's a lot more than, all right, well, who's the starting 11 going to be? On offense, really, it's like, okay, who are going to be like the 16 to 18 guys that are just going to play a lot? outside of quarterback and offensive line. On defense, it's more of, okay, it's not just the starting 11. It's kind of, who are the 19 to 20 guys that are going to be playing a lot of snaps? What is the linebacker rotation going to look like? We're going to have somewhat of an idea, but Madden Faramo's been here since the Georgia Bowl prep, going through practice, same as Jadon Blair. That's going to be interesting. Preston Zinner, is he a kid that you can continue to keep off the field if you don't move him? I don't know if you can. Bodie Cahoon, Teddy Rizak, on top of all the talent that you have. At safety, yes, Jalen Stroman, he's a part of the program. Can't practice because he's still recovering from his.
He's doing all the workouts and stuff. Like, he's in the workout, but he won't be doing I'm curious to see does he in street clothes? Is he and actually just go through drills? I'm curious to see what that's going to be. But like you said, he's not going to be taking any one-on-one reps. He's not going to be doing it. I mean, he's out for the spring. I don't think he'll be doing anything contact related. He's with the team. He's working out, but he won't be practicing.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to be really interested to see what that safety battle is going to start looking like. And I view battles like it's the process of setting the rotation. I don't think it's going to be as clear cut. I see a lot of questions and get some questions on the board on some of the pieces that I put up. Like, do you think if they have a good enough spring, they'll be the starter? And I've been saying this a lot after a lot of the conversations I've had with you, Bryan, and it's always, look, pay attention to the snaps. Pay attention to how much people rotate in and play. And the safety is going to look a lot different than it did last year. You're not taking Xavier Watts off the field. That's why Rod Hurd would rotate in sometimes. You're not really taking a Don off. You're not taking Xavier off. But this season, it's going to be a little bit more of, okay, they're going to rotate that position a little bit more. So who are the 2 to 3 guys that they feel confident that they can keep putting them in? That's what I'm looking forward to seeing in the spring. It's now a set list of players, not just the one guy who's, this is our starter, and when they're tired, they'll come out for a series or whatever. And that's what's going to be fun, is who is going to keep earning more and more of the coach's trust as these 15 practices go along.
That's what I love about the spring, Trev. It's our really first crack to start to see, as we said, this is what this 25 team is going to look like. We start to get a glimpse of that now. We're going to talk, that's kind of part one of our show. Next, we're going to get into talking about what we want to see this spring. And so Trevor and I'll talk about that a little bit. Then we'll get into kind of what we know, what we don't know about this team. And the what we know part is you got to build on. What we don't know is you got to improve upon, or you got to find answers for. So we'll get to that. Before we do, folks, see that little thumbs up button right down there below. Go ahead and hit the like button on that. We would greatly appreciate that. It lets us know that you support what we're doing. And another way you can support what we're doing is make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, not just the Irish Breakdown podcast, but also the CFB Nation podcast. We put our show up breaking down the top 10 quarterbacks on our CFB Nation YouTube channel and our CFB Nation podcast. And I'll have some shows coming up all week that Bill and Bill have done the last couple weeks as well, that I'm going to be able to get up on the CFB Nation channel, its YouTube channel as well. So you're going to want to check that out. Just all those different ways you can support us at Irish Breakdown. But of course, best way to support us is sign up for the message boards. We had 2 people sign up for gold memberships yesterday. I'm going to respond to those emails today. I was a little slammed with all the pot of gold stuff yesterday and then doing the show, but I'm going to get to those today, get caught up on the emails today. But you can always sign up for a message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So part 2, Trev, is we kind of talked big picture about the spring. Now it's kind of when we have a bit of fun and the things that we want to see this spring. What are we looking for mostly? Part of our job is to observe what we see and tell you what we see. But that doesn't mean that there aren't things that we're looking for that will the answer to which will either make us feel good about where this football team is, or maybe say, I'm a little uncertain about what's going on. When the issues in 2016 arose, you started to see them in the spring, which is why I had a lot of people not happy with me when I was leading up to that season, when I said, I'm concerned about this year and how this year is going to go, because you could see those warts start in the spring, and then they carried into fall camp. But then the same thing is true the next year. You could see in the spring there was a different attitude with that football team than there was the year before, and you thought, like, hey, I think this team is going to bounce back because of what we saw in the spring. So let's talk about some of the things that we're looking for, Trev, to see this spring. It can be any type of thing: position battle, players, all those different types of things. And so I'll let you kick things off, Trev, with the first thing that you're looking forward to seeing this spring. And obviously, there's one overarching one. We all want to see what happens at quarterback. So we're going to focus on kind of other things besides that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the quarterback and one of mine, but obviously the quarterback battle is something we all want to see. But beside that, Trev, what is the first thing that you're looking for when you're going to practice, when we're hearing things, when we're talking to different people about how the spring is going? What's the first thing that you're going to be looking for when you're evaluating the spring?
Overarching, first of all, for me, is I want to see, and I'm sure everybody else is in this boat as well, I want to see a healthy spring. I maybe call it PTSD. The injury bug from last year was really just, it felt like every week you were just kind of waiting to see, okay, did they make it out of this week of practice healthy? Is everybody good to go for game day? Everybody good for the next day of practice? Overarching, want to see health. But for me, the first thing that I can't wait to see is the position battle at right guard. It's something that you had mentioned before in the previous segment, but that is the one spot for me along the offensive line that I think is the most interesting, because I think it's the biggest question mark. Yes, left tackle is one, but at the end of the day, Notre Dame has two guys on their line capable of playing left tackle. We saw Anthony Knapp do it and start for 15 games. We watched Charles Jagasaw do it in the national championship against Ohio State's best pass rusher. Billy Schrouth, we've seen him play left guard. That's where he played the majority of 2024, despite starting the season at right guard. Center, unfortunately, Ashton Craig can't play there. Joe Otting is slotting in. And then at right tackle, Emil Wagner was your only offensive lineman that started all 16 games. But right guard for me, especially with Rocco leaving the portal, it's a question mark on where Jagasaw will play. I know you put the intel piece on the board talking about where potentially people could be lining up. Right guard to me is really interesting because will it be Charles Jagasaw? Will Billy Schrouth move back to right guard because that's where he started the season in 24? Is Sullivan Absher going to make a push? Is Gerby Lambert going to have just such a strong spring where Joe Rudolph and Mike Denbrock are in a spot where they're like, God, we can't not play 76. There's no way that he cannot be on the field for us. And so what does that look like? What's the path of, I don't want to say least resistance, but does Gerby Lambert, somebody that could potentially be in a spot where he has to play, is it more likely he'll dethrone somebody like Emil Wagner at right tackle, or does he just kind of slot in nicely there at right guard? Who knows? That for me is one of the biggest things, because I think once you figure out, and I'm not saying the offensive line is going to be set in stone after the spring, but
you want people to compete, man. That's the big thing.
Yes.
It's like, I want to see people compete. So that way, no matter who starts, that guy's going to be a dude, because the only way you can get on the field on this team is because you played like a dude. No seniority, no playing a guy because he's a veteran only, no playing a guy just because he's a 5-star recruit.
Facts.
Play the guy, the best guy. And I'm with you, Trev, man. I am really hoping that there's a fierce battle there. And it's just even about coaching. Was Joe Rudolph going to let a battle happen? I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about, are these guys going to say, hey, look, I'm going to make you – look, Emil may start at right tackle, but I'm going to make you think twice about it. That's how hard I'm going to play this spring. Hey, you may think Billy Schrouth is starting guard this year, but I'm going to make you think twice about it. I'm going to make you think twice about just anointing Ashton Craig as a starting center when he gets back in the fall. That's a player thing. That's not a Joe Rudolph thing. That's a player thing. You got to have that right mentality. And we can talk about all we want about Joe Rudolph's got to do this, got to do that. And I know that's not what you're saying. I'm just adding to it. I want to see the players say, hey, man, I'm going to make life real tough for Coach Rudolph. If the one thing we can say about Joe Rudolph coming out of the spring is he's got a really tough decision to make, that's going to get me super fired up about this football team. Because if Joe Rudolph has if it's a no-brainer who your starting five is, I'm going to be super disappointed. Because that means some guys didn't really have big springs. Unless, there's the exception of 5 guys who are just so freaking good but like, you get what I'm saying? Like, I want it to be like at least a couple spots you're just like, this summer and fall camp's going to be real interesting because of the way so-and-so played, right? That's kind of what I want to see, man. I'm excited. And we've seen it before where we thought so-and-so was going to start and he ends up not starting because somebody came in and beat him out. We went into last spring thinking no brainer that Rod Hurd's going to start at safety. Of course he is. And then Don Schuler was like, "Nah, I'm good. I got this." You know what I mean? And that's what's got me excited to about this spring, man. And like to your point about the guard battle, maybe it's not right guard. Maybe it's the battle's actually left guard because Billy's. Who knows? But man, I'm excited to see that competition in the offensive line, but the interior too, because that's been a bit of a problem for Notre Dame in the last couple of years. They just haven't been able to get strong play out of the interior of the offensive line. And really the last few years. And if your offensive line is going to be great, I mean, the one thing that you could say you had in common in 2012 and 2018 and 2017 and 2020 is the interior of your offensive line was pretty good to varying degrees. The 2012 interior offensive line wasn't like elite, but it was good. You had Chris Watt was outstanding. Braxton Cave was coming off the injury. Wasn't quite the same player. You had Mike Golick Jr., had to step in at some point in time when he got hurt, and then I think he moved over to guard in 2012, right? And then so they were experienced veteran players. They knew what to do. They could compete and battle. They weren't necessarily like elite players, but they just knew what to do. They could get the job done at a high level. There wasn't the inconsistency that we saw the last couple of years. 2017 was great inside. I mean, Quentin Nelson was great. Sam Mustipher had the best season of his career. Alex Bars in 2017 was outstanding at guard. That's probably the best interior Notre Dame has had in the last 20 years was that 17 unit. 15 interior was still pretty good too, right? I mean, it was Quentin Nelson, Nick Martin, and Steve Elmer. 2020, it was Aaron Banks and Tommy Kramer, Jarrett Patterson. And when the O-line started to falter late in the year, why? Jarrett Patterson got hurt. Tommy Kramer got hurt. And then all of a sudden, your line was good, but not as good as it had been. Yeah. That's you got to be great at tackle, but if you're great at tackle, but not good up the middle, your line's going to struggle, as we saw in 2023.
Yeah, facts.
And settling that interior is, Trev, I'm with you, man. That's going to be a big one. It's going to be a big one. My first one is it's not so much the quarterback battle. It's I want to see someone separate this spring. I'm going to feel way better. Look, it's not an end all be all. I'm just telling you that Bryan, what could make you confident that Notre Dame is a title contender by the end of spring? Because normally by the end of spring, everybody's thinking we got a lot to work on. Like every team in the country is like, we got a lot to work on. But what's the thing that could make you as an analyst come out of spring and say, you think this team is like, now that you've seen this spring, you've seen this team, what's the one thing that you could say, my takeaway is this, and that leads me to believe that this team is going to be special and has a chance to compete for a title? It's not that they'll have named a starter. It's that by the end of spring, we're all going to look around and be like, that guy separated. And it's not that CJ Carr separated or that Kenny Minchie separated. At this point in time, I don't care who it is. I just want someone to step up this spring and say, this is my job.
Yep.
And that is the best way to eliminate any potential locker room problems around the quarterback battle, is that one guy just steps up and is like, I love that guy too, but this is my job. This is my team, and I'm taking hold of it. That, for me, Trev, is the number one thing that I want to see this spring, is somebody separates at quarterback, and their level of play is such, and their leadership is such, and their playmaking is such that we all just kind of look around and we're like, yeah, I know. It's him. Yeah, it's him. Yeah, that's what I want to see. That's my number one.
That's how you keep continuity on the team, man. And that's what I love, is when the players take it upon themselves to make that decision. And I'm not talking about the wide receivers saying they're factoring it, but not just the wide receivers saying, yeah, we believe it should be this guy. Obviously, the coaches are going to get the final say in that, hey, they will ultimately give the player the green light. But in an ideal world, and one that I am also in belief that will happen, is that somebody's just going to separate themselves so much that the decision gets made for Gino Guidugli, for Mike Denbrock, for Marcus Freeman of, just every day in and day out, in practice, in the film room, in the weight room, out on the field, that guy separated, whether it's 18, 8, or 12. And for me, that's going to be a really good spot if the players get to that point. What I don't want to see is everybody just kind of plays meh, and then it carries over into the fall, and then everybody's still kind of meh, and then the coaches are like, well, I guess All right,
Yeah.
man, you're the guy.
Somebody's gonna win the battle, but did they really win the battle? Right? Yeah.
Yep. And
That's the worst place to be in as a coach, Trev. Is
I
you're
can
like,
imagine.
so who's playing the best? You're like, can we define this differently?
Yeah.
Can we define it as who's not playing the worst and go with that guy? That's when you know it's going to be a long year. I've only been in that situation once, and you're like, yeah, we're going to have to find some answers there because it's just not good. But and it wasn't my position, but I was on a team once where it's like with our offensive line, we were like, guys, we got to go with 5. I know we don't have 5 right now that we trust, but we got to play 5. You know what I mean? We can't switch to 3-man or 8-man football here before the season. So we got to find 5 some way, somehow. But somebody said, Andrew Gilmore said, AKA Michigan's quarterback battle last year. But he's spot on. He's spot on. It's like it didn't matter who started. None of them were somebody had to start, but none of them were starters. I mean, none of those guys were starters. You don't want to be in that situation. I have no doubt that I have no fear of that. But there's still always that they got to prove it. No doubt. What's your number 2, Trev? What's your number 2 thing you're looking for this spring?
Number 2 for me is the younger wide receivers taking their strides. And I think that is ripe for the taking because you go and you look at what the state of the wide receiver room is going into the spring practice. Malachi Fields is not on campus yet. Will Pauling is having a limited spring because of he's getting something cleaned up, I think, from just nagging injury from
a foot thing. Yeah. I mean, he's going to practice, but he's going to be on a little bit of a limited basis. And that'll be different for each player. Yeah. Some guys that'll mean no team. Some guys that'll mean a lot more. You know, they may only do individual. They don't do anything competitive. It's different for different people. Yeah.
Yep. And then you have Jordan Faison, who's currently with the lacrosse team, who will be around in the spring, but not in the same light as some of these young receivers. Guys like Cam Williams, Micah Gilbert, Logan Saldate, those 3 guys I'm going to have my eye on this spring because now we talked a lot about rotations. Let's call a spade here. I don't know what type of performance Micah Gilbert can have in the spring to dethrone Malachi Fields coming in and starting in the boundary in the fall. But what I do believe can happen is you are a lot more willing with it being a forecasted another long season. You're a lot more comfortable if Malachi comes out for a player. If you want to move him around, you have somebody else that can come in and play the boundary. Yes. And there isn't going to be this.
Or Micah can go play somewhere else with Malachi at times.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. I mean, with him, it's him doing the same thing. We're talking about the O-line, Trev. He's got to make Mike Brown say, figure it out, but you got to get me on the field. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it's not my problem to solve as far as how do you get me on the field, but my play is such that you got to get me on the field. Not saying that verbally, but his play tells Mike Brown's like, I got to figure out a way to get number 14 on the field.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, agree.
Yes. Same thing with Cam Williams, KK Smith, Logan Saldate, all those guys. They are now in a prime position of, look, Will Pauling isn't taking the full amount of reps. Jordan Faison isn't taking a full amount of reps. Jaden Greathouse is who he is. Right now, he walks into the spring as the don of that room. Jaden Greathouse is that dude right now. And I foresee him continuing to be that dude as the offseason progresses. But you have guys like KK and Cam Williams who are really the 2 burners on that receiving core. They now have the opportunity to step into the spring and say, hey, try to find ways to keep me off the field because I'm going to put you in a spot where you can't. Mm-hmm. And that's a really good spot to be in if you're Mike Denbrock, if you're Mike Brown. And that's also, in a way, I think that's going to continue to elevate the quarterback competition as well. Because it's one of those where, I mean, now there's, on top of the gravy of just being Notre Dame starting quarterback, you will now get to be the starting quarterback walking into an offense with just an absolutely loaded arsenal of weapons. And the opportunities right in front of these young receivers. Now, and I don't want to discount Scrap Richardson or Jerome Bettis Jr. or Elijah Burris. I don't. I just think that there's a lot in front of them. But they also have the opportunity to be getting some more meaningful reps. And so for me, that's the second thing that I'm looking forward to is that next jump. Because in years past, we've seen it where Notre Dame's wide receivers, the top line is, all right, here we go. But then you see some other players rotate in, and it's like, all right, yeah, this is going to be a running series. and that's one thing that I think with the development of these younger players, I think some of that's going to be eliminated to where you're not missing as much of a step and you can start to diversify your offense in a big way.
We're close to having a similar number 2, Trev. My number 2 is more big picture. It's the pass game as a whole. I want to see the pass game take a jump this spring. I don't know this to be true. I believe it's going to be true. Just knowing how coaching football works is that's the area where Notre Dame knows they got to get a lot better. And I think it's an area where they know it's going to be a bigger part of their team just because of the makeup of this team, which means it's going to need a lot of extra work this spring. I want to see the pass game take a jump. I want to start to see some of these receivers beat Leonard Moore. It may not be good for the fan base's mindset, but I want to hear them beating Christian Gray and Leonard Moore. And that's going to lead some to believe like maybe those guys aren't as good. And like, no, but that's just how it's going to be. But I want to see it take a jump. I want to see what scheme adjustments are made. We won't be able to report them, but I want to see them. I want to see players step up and be better. I want to see the quarterback play be better, throwing the ball. I want to see the O-line get better in pass pro. I want to see the tight ends make more plays this spring than we saw last spring when they were super limited. Mitchell wasn't practicing. Eli was limited. There just wasn't a lot we could see, and it's going to be somewhat similar this spring, but I want to kind of see Eli Raridan take that jump in the offense. And then I also, just from a year 2 standpoint, is what does year 2 under Mike Denbrock look like with the passing game now that you've got a completely different type of style of player quarterback? So that's my number 2, Trev, is I just want to see the pass game take a jump. It won't be a finished product by the end of spring, but when you're going to have a practice period where I believe they're going to kind of pull back a little bit on some of the bang and some of the physicality that you normally see because the season was extended so long, that's an area where you can get a lot of work in, because it's also not only an area of improvement, but it's also an area where it's also part of it's partly conditioning, because there's so much running involved. That's something that I want to see. I want to see the pass game take a big jump this spring, schematically, execution wise, and just an overall evolution of that period. What's your number 3, Trev?
Number 3 for me is going to be on the other side of the ball, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that position battle at safety. Adon Schuler has one side locked down. I don't see anybody coming into the spring and dethroning him as well. But one of the hotter topics of conversation is, what is the replacement and the journey of Notre Dame's defense going to look like replacing a guy like Xavier Watts? And again, like we've stated in so many articles and so many shows and posts on the board, it's not going to be a one-man job. But that's what I think is interesting, because in years past, you've looked at defensive back rotations and it's like, all right, this guy's pretty good. This guy can come and start. And then it kind of starts to fall off. Notre Dame is loaded right now in the safety room to where like there's 3 to 4 guys where you can look at it and say, okay, yeah, I'm very comfortable if they are on the field. All individually having to do things to improve, which is what the spring is for. But that's why I'm excited to see it. You go and you look at Luke Talich. Starting off with him, is he ready for that moment? Is he ready to take the jump and not just be the mop-up minute special teams guy that he's been? Very effective in those moments. He had that big hit against Penn State, a play that I watch on a loop quite often. And
Did you see the tweet I put out last night?
I sure did.
Did you see who the first person to like the tweet was?
Mm-mm.
It was the kid he was tweeting about, which I just thought was freaking hilarious. Was the first person to like my tweet, but I love that. Penn State fan getting on his feelings about Notre Dame offering their committed running back, and I said, hey man, if you're not feeling good, here's something I always brings me up, and it's the highlights to that game. But every time you just see that Luke Talich hit, you're like, ooh man,
oh, it's just yeah. But is he ready to take that jump? And I've said this before. Let me say it again, loud and clear. Don't get wrapped up in the fact that he was a previous walk-on. Like that's not. No, Luke Talich was brought to this school to be playing football at a high level. Is he ready to take that jump? Is Bronte Johnson, for all of his athletic ability, a player that has been coined to, if he needs to play corner, he'll play corner. If he needs to play safety, he'll play safety. He could go and play wide receiver if we needed him to. And so is he going to take that next step? Is he ready? Is Kennedy Urlacher ready to be more than just the downhill thumper? Because now in today's football game, you need to be more than just that alley filler looking to headhunt and blow people up at the line of scrimmage. Is he going to hone in, and is he going to develop his coverage game? Most likely, yeah. I trust the guy in charge of pass game coordination on the defensive side of the ball. That he has a pretty decent track record. And then, of course, you got Jadon Blair, the 6'5" incoming freshman, the guy that somehow is taller than Luke Talich at 6'4". So this room is really, really intriguing to watch. Right?
Bronte Johnson 6'2", and he's the third tallest safety on the depth chart. Like I put this up the other day, so I put a projected depth chart for the spring, and my projected depth chart, just so you guys know, on the message board only is part projection at some positions, but also part of it is some intel that I've gathered, about where guys are going to play and things like that. So I'm putting the secondary depth chart together, and I'm very happy that I'm putting Bronte Johnson at safety based on things that I've been told. But I'm typing this in, and because I got a graphic that shows them all. And here's the height of the safeties on the Notre Dame depth chart: 6'5", 6'4", 6'2", 6'2", 6'1", 6 foot. Who's your returning starter? And 5'11". And Jalen Stroman, who's not on the list, because this is guys who are only going to be practicing in the spring. Jalen Stroman's on the list. He's 6'1". So when you add him to the depth chart, it's going to be 6'5", 6'4", 6'2", 6'2", 6'1", 6'1", 6 foot, 5'11", and 5'11". That is your starting depth chart. That is your depth chart at safety at Notre Dame. If that's not the longest depth chart, it's in a tall wide receiver room, not even a normal wide receiver room. That's it's going to be wild to watch that, dude. Really wild to watch that. I'm looking forward to seeing quarterbacks think that they have a window, and it doesn't really have the window you thought you were.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah, that's my number 3. That's what I'm looking forward to the most. What about your number 3, Brian?
Before I get to my number 3, y'all in the chat, I want to hear what you guys think about this. What are you guys looking forward to this spring? Andrew Gilmore just says he wants to hear about Garby Lambert. As a summer arrival, he was not destined to start, but he's had a lot of time at Notre Dame. Has he caught up to Knapp? Like, that's a very interesting one. I want to hear from a lot of Indy Milton fans. I just want to see a healthy team. Fair. But beyond that, what are you guys looking to see this spring? And my number 3 is similar to Jim Halloran's. He talks about Chris Ash. My number 3 is really, it's about Chris Ash. And not so much that I want to know if he's a good coach or not. Like, we're not going to know that until we see games. But it's more so just learning about him. Every successful coach is different. How Al Golden coaches is different than how Mike Elko coaches, and is different than how Clark Lee coached, and how Marcus Freeman coached, and how Bob Diaco coached, and how Barry Alvarez coached. All the successful D coordinators at Notre Dame. What's his style? How does he interact? What's he going to be doing? Where's he going to? I mean, even simple things like where's he going to be standing in practice? Who's he working with from a position group standpoint? Is he roaming, or does he stick with the secondary, which is kind of his area that he's focused on in his career? Is he a loud guy? Is he a barker? Is he more of a teacher? None of these things are right or wrong. It's just learning about him is what I'm looking. I mean, you look forward to learning about a new coach. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that. How does he interact with the players? How do they react to him when he's going off? Are they putting their heads down and walking away like it's not really sinking in? Or are they looking right at him? Like there's this clip that I saw. It's of Bruce Pearl, the Auburn basketball coach, just going off on a kid. And the whole time the kid's just looking at him just like this, like just won't take his eye. I mean, I don't know that he's like yelling, like screaming like bad things. It's just like, but he's very boisterous in whatever he's telling the kid. And the kid's just like taking the coaching. And that's something I'm looking to see is that's always not a concern. That's always a question mark when a new coach comes in, is how quickly will the players adapt to whatever his style is, because he has to be himself. He can't pretend to be like Al Golden. He can't be like, well, sure, how did Al Golden handle this? Okay, I'll handle it like it. No, because eventually it's like the scene from Necessary Roughness when the head coach is in the hospital and Robert Loggia's character's got the suit on and he's just like, this suit doesn't fit for me. He starts ripping it off and he's like, like that, it's not who he is, man. And you got to be yourself. And I want to learn what that is. And I want to see how the players react to it and how they take his coaching. And then also, of course, what are the things he's focusing on? What is like, we kind of get annoyed, Trev, that like we get these 5 periods of practice, and now we only get 4. And normally I'm just like, whatever, like, okay, let's watch him go through individual again. And that, but like this spring, I'm actually kind of looking forward to that beginning part of practice, because I don't know what Chris Ash is going to want to do the first 3 periods of practice. Does he focus on this? Does he focus on that? Does he do that? Does he do this? And it's not a judgment thing. It's just, I want to know what he does. I want to know what his points of emphasis are. And we'll eventually see in the fall, kind of how successful his run scheme is. And that stuff doesn't matter as much to me this spring. It's what foundation is he laying from establishing himself as part of this group that he's sort of you're the only outsider that's now joined our community of players, and coaches, and you're the how are you going to adjust to us? But then it's up to them to adjust to him. How does that go? It's a big part of the spring for me is seeing that relationship really kind of take the next stage. I mean, there's been some winter workout stuff, but now it's like, okay, how are you going to establish yourself as the leader in the right way with this unit? How do they respond to you? And what are your MITs in practice? What are your most important tasks in practice? He talks about fundamentals in his press conference. Love to hear it. Now let's see what you're going to do to work on those things. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. So it's not sort of a judging or evaluating. It's just, I want to learn what he does. And then we'll evaluate the product beginning the last Saturday of August. It's just about learning who Chris Ash is as a coordinator and how he fits at Notre Dame. It's going to be one of the more intriguing and really fun parts of evaluating this team during the spring. What's your last one, Trev?
Last one for me is the progression of the defensive ends. We talked a lot this offseason about they need to continue to build their pass rushing arsenal. Bryce Young, in order to take that next step, he has to elevate his game from where it was at his true freshman season. Because at some point it's going to catch up with you. Yes, you were the exciting 6'5", 260-pound true freshman. Build on it. Josh Burnham, you've been great against the run. It is now time for you to take that next step in your evolution and become a more lethal pass rusher. How do you do that? It's by adding more tools to the belt. We've been saying that a lot. And it's not just about those 2 guys. Junior is going to have to continue to do that. Logan Thomas is going to have to continue to do that, because once you reach a certain level, you can't just rely on, well, I'm just more athletic than said guy. Playing Power 4 football, and you're going to be playing in the playoffs for years to come. You're going to be playing against light competition. How do you generate that pass rush? You add more tools to the tool belt. And spring is now the time to do that. The foundation that you lay in the spring are the things that you're going to continue to rely on and build on as summer hits and as the fall camp hits. And then it comes to culmination as the season progresses. And so that for me is the final thing that I'm hoping to see, is that Al Washington is working with the defensive ends of, hey, here's how you get around this. Here's how, instead of just using well, I'm just going to dip my shoulder and be more athletic than this guy. And yeah, I mean, that'll work when you play Purdue. That's going to work when you play potentially Navy, if they're ever in a passing situation, which, I mean, this past season, they were more so than in previous years. That'll work against the Central Michigans of the world and the Tennessee States of the world. But now Notre Dame needs it to work against the Penn States of the world, against the Ohio States of the world. Did honestly a pretty good job of it against Georgia. The D-line played really well against Georgia, honestly. But you need it against those type of teams. And so for me in the spring, that's what I want to see. Chris Ash talks about fundamentals and honing in those skills. Once you start reaching a certain level, that is the fundamentals of being an edge rusher, is adding more tools to that belt. And that's what I'm hoping to see. That's number 4 for me, Brian.
We are close. Mine is just zeroes in a little bit more on the young guys on the D-line as a whole. I want to say, yes, I want to see Josh Burnham take a step, but honestly, I won't really know that Josh Burnham's, I mean, I guess we could if he's like just whipping guys in one-on-ones, but I don't know how much of that we're going to see. I want to see Logan Thomas. I want to see Bryce Young. I want to see Armel Mukum. I want to see Devin Houston, Sean Sevillano. I want to see those guys really take that step, because I think ultimately it's their emergence that's going to have the biggest impact on this defense. It's Bryce Young and Logan Thomas becoming difference makers in pass rushing situations. Even if Logan Thomas is simply just used sort of in the Jalen Sneed role. Let's say Jalen Sneed's getting more true linebacker reps on third down, or they want to get a little bit more length in there in certain situations. Maybe he's someone who is there rushing with Jalen Sneed. But where you're just like, dude, we got to get number 10 on the field, man. This guy's just too dynamic. We got to get 30 on the field in pass rushing situations. I want to see Armel Mukam kind of take that big jump where Al Golden or Al Washington's like, I got to figure out a way to get 88 on the field. I mean, that's what excites me, is when those young guys, Brennan Vernon, Devin Houston, Sean Sevillano, whoever that may be, I just want to see some 2 to 3, at least one edge, at least one interior, but ideally a couple at each, really kind of take that jump this spring. And we see it every year. We see young guys kind of take that jump every year. We saw Jaden Greathouse kind of do it last spring. We saw Don Schuler take it last spring. We saw Drake Bowen do it last spring. We saw Christian Gray start to do it last spring, where those rising sophomores, some of them played prominent roles, some of them didn't. Christian Gray played very little as a true freshman outside of the Pitt game when he was forced into it. Drake Bowen didn't play much. I think he had less than 100 snaps on defense last year. Don Schuler had less than 100 snaps on defense last year. Those are all true sophomores that didn't play a whole lot as freshmen, who took that big jump. And then we saw some of the redshirt sophomores who didn't really do a whole lot or weren't overly productive. Andrew Gilmore talks about Junior Tilamaka. He wasn't a sophomore, so I was talking about the sophomores. But you then see the redshirt sophomores, which is what Armel Mukam is going to be. Junior didn't do a whole lot in 2023. Didn't really do a whole lot last spring. His jump didn't come until the fall. And even then, he wasn't playing until injuries. But when he got his chance, he stepped up and made the most of it. But I want to see some of those guys start to step up this spring. We won't get a chance to see Boubacar, but some of these other guys we can see. Armel Mukam being the one. Like, if you could tell me, Brian, if you could, you only have 5 players in the entire team, and you can wave a magic wand and say they're going to get as close to their full potential as this season as they can, that are in the first 2 years. I'd say, okay, magic wand, I'm going to go for and hit Cam Williams. Right, he's one of my 2 freshman sophomores going to reach it. All right, going to wave my magic wand, and Gerby Lambert, you're going to be one. I'm going to wave my magic wand, and Bryce Young is going to be one. I'm going to wave my magic wand, and Armel Mukam, redshirt sophomore, is going to be one. And then I'm going to wave my magic wand, and my 5th guy, I'll keep that one to myself, because he plays the quarterback position. So I'll just go ahead and keep that one to myself. But that's kind of where I would be. I mean, 2 of those guys are going to be on the D line, and not because of need per se. That's kind of there. I don't think there's a need there for it. There's plenty of bodies. There's plenty of good players. It's more so they have the kind of high level talent that you want to see. So Andrew just mentioned Tay Johnson. He's another. They're all in that group of those rising sophomores, and that didn't play a whole lot as rookies, that take the big jump that we've seen a lot of guys do. Jeremiah Love went from the, 3rd running back at times, 2nd running back at times, to a star in his 2nd year. Like, who takes those jumps this spring amongst those young players? Kingston is another one you could throw into that conversation as a potential guy that does that as a rising sophomore. Can't believe I forgot about him. But just the more of those guys that jump up, the better, but especially on the D-line.
Yeah.
The rising sophomores, the redshirt sophomores, that group's emergence is going to determine if this is a pretty good defensive line or an elite defensive line at the end of the season. And because I am throwing Boubacar in that group, I'm just not focused on him right now because he won't play in the spring. But when we get to the fall, the freshman, sophomore, redshirt sophomore group, that's where the majority of your elite talent is at. And the more of those guys can step up, the better. So that's where I'm at on number 4. So really good discussion there, Trev. The last thing we're going to talk about, folks, is going to be what we know and what we don't know about this football team. But before we get to that point in time, you see that little thumbs up that's right below you on your screen? Go ahead and hit that for us and make sure that it's the only time you hit. If you hit it earlier, don't hit it again. We don't want you to unlike it. We want you to make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to our CFP Nation channel. We're starting to put more and more content on there. Also on the podcast platform, which is always the number 1 option, but also on the YouTube platform. We're about 30 watch hours from you guys watching our show on CFB Nation away from getting monetized. So that'd be great. So I put, if you're on the message board, I did put our coaching top 10 coaches breakdown on the CFB Nation channel. We've got some other content. Bill Bender and Bill Trocchi recently interviewed Stuart Mandel from The Athletic. They also recently interviewed Andrea Adelson from ESPN. Those videos are on the YouTube channel. You can check those out at CFB Nation and help us get to that monetized level, because we really want to, this offseason, sort of take that channel to the next level. I think it's time to start growing that, where we can talk more than just about Notre Dame football. And you'll definitely want to check that out. And you can find that at CFB Nation on whatever your platform, podcast platform is. You also, of course, that's after you subscribe to Irish Breakdown on those platforms. Give us a 5-star review on both of those. And, of course, make sure you're subscribed to the CFB Nation YouTube channel as well. But, as we always say, the best way to support us and the best way to get the most out of your Irish Breakdown experience is to make sure you sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So, Trev, the last part to this conversation is looking at what we know and what we don't know about this Notre Dame football team. And this is always the fun part of the spring, because there's things you go into the spring and I'm confident in this. And then you come out of spring just as confident, maybe more confident, or, I thought this was going to be a strength, but it wasn't. And then there's things you go into the spring, you're like, I'm not sure about this part of the position group, or I'm not sure about this team. And then by the end of spring, you're like, yep, I was right to be concerned, or, or you're like, dude, I'm not even worried about that now. Did you see how well so-and-so played or whatever played? And so this last part's going to be that. And Trev and I have both come up with 4 things that we're kind of, that we know and we don't know about this football team going into the spring. And the first one, Trev, that we know about this team, which is really exciting, is we don't know who's going to start at all the positions. We don't know what the depth chart's going to look like. We don't know this. We don't know that. But the one thing that gives me the most excitement, and the reason I'm not as nervous about how certain position groups play out, is because it's kind of like, does it matter? Like in the past, I might talk about nothing other than Cam Williams needing to break out during the spring, because like if he doesn't break out, they're screwed. We have seen this. We have been in years where, like, if Armel Mukum doesn't plan out at D tackle, they're in trouble. I don't feel that way about this team. It's like, yeah, it's kind of like, okay, it's like whoever, just they need somebody. And that's kind of where I'm at, is this is a really deep and a really talented team. And it gives me more, like, I'll put it like this. Archer 452 is in our chat. He's an Ohio State fan. If Notre Dame lost as much from their team as Ohio State lost, it'd be full panic mode in our chat, like every day, and including with us, if we were under the previous leadership and the way the roster was constructed. It'd be like, oh my gosh, they might go. I just hope they make a bowl game next year. They couldn't sustain that kind of departures. Now it's like Notre Dame didn't lose as much. They still lost a lot of important players. It's like in the past, losing a guy like Xavier Watts would make us be like, I don't know if they're going to be good at stopping the pass game next year. But now it's kind of like, man, that guy was so good. I loved watching him play. He's one of the best to ever do it at Notre Dame. They're going to be okay. Yeah, and Xavier would probably tell you that, guys, they're going to be okay because of so and so and so and so. I mean, you hear this stuff all the time from former players, like, guys, they're going to be fine. And you're just kind of like, I don't know who's going to step up receiver, but I'm confident that somebody will. Because unlike past years, it's not just one guy who's going to make or break this room. It was Lorenzo Styles stepping up in 2022 was going to make or break that football team in the pass game. If he didn't step up, they're screwed. You can maybe throw Deion Colsey in there. If those two, but now it's like if these two guys don't step up, it's like they're still going to be okay. They got a lot of talent. And that's the thing that gets me most excited about this football team. It's just there's a lot of depth, a lot of talent, which means what, Trev? A much wider margin for error. And that's where you want to be.
I think you said it perfectly. Yes, there's position battles going on, and I don't want to devalue those. I saw that. Oh, Jim, that's so good. Look, I don't want to devalue some of the position battles that will be going on in the spring. But let's break down and take a realistic look at some of the ones that we've talked about. Start out at the safety position. Let's say we're talking about your margin for error. let's just say, and I don't believe this to be true, let me put that out there as a disclaimer, but let's say Luke Talich doesn't work out and he's not ready for that moment. Okay. Well, now you have 6'2" Bronte, Brian Urlacher's son, and a 6'5" true freshman in Jadon Blair.
And that's before
and Jalen Stroman. Yeah. And Jalen Stroman's coming back off of injury. And that's just one of the safeties because the other one is being held down by somebody who started all 16 games last year. Let's talk about right guard. The biggest dilemma isn't who specifically it's going to be. It's just which
will it be
one
good?
Will it be?
Right.
Yeah. Like it's just like, all right, is it going to be 6'7", 300 and some odd pound Sullivan Absher? Is it going to be 6'7", 300 some odd pound Charles Jagasaw? Is Billy Schrouth probably your most experienced interior lineman going to move back there? And then we're just kind of having the same conversation at
is
left
it
guard.
Your 15-game left tackle, starting left tackle, freshman All-American Anthony Knapp?
Yeah.
And that's the only reason we end there is because 6'5", 330-pound Chris Terrick is injured and isn't going to be practicing this spring.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about that. I'm excited to see what the interior of this offensive line is going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Schrouth, potentially Jagasaw, Sullivan Absher, maybe an Anthony Knapp. Ashton Craig will eventually come back. Joe Otting, who I thought was really good last spring and was very good in moments where he got on the field. I mean, could Gerby Lambert move inside and play guard? I mean, we have all these questions, and Cam Herron is a freshman, and you look at it and you're just like, and that's with Coogan, Spindler, and Sam Pendleton all transferring out.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it's like, dude, the depth's going to be, you're going to be just as long as someone wins the job, you're like, that person's going to be a good player.
Yep.
All right. As long as it's not like, well, they all sucked. Somebody's got to win by default, which has happened at Notre Dame. It has happened at Notre Dame. And you hope to kind of see that this spring is that you're just like, who's going to start a guard? I don't know, but I don't really care because I've watched all three of those guys ball out this spring.
Yeah.
That's a good place to be. It's a good place to be. Number two thing, Trev, is what we know about this football team is they're going to benefit from being in year 2 of the Mike Denbrock system. There's no doubt about that. How do I know that? Because I've watched Mike Denbrock for over 10 years now as an offensive coordinator take year 2 and be a lot better in almost every instance. I mean, you look at the Notre Dame team in 2014, they were good his first year. A lot of stats, threw the ball really well, turned the ball over a little bit too much at times, and we're inconsistent. The numbers are really good. Everett threw for 3,400 yards and 29 touchdowns, and they ran for over 2,000 yards that year with Torian Folston leading the way, and they were good and had some really good moments. I mean, just they were really good against Florida State. And then 2015, they just took things to a whole new level, man. Just with a bunch of injuries, still were really a good football team. And you saw kind of the work he did there, and then you went and saw kind of what they did at LSU. Before we even get to LSU, his first year at Cincinnati, because remember he left Notre Dame in 2016, went to Cincinnati. His first year there, they scored 20.9 points per game and finished 111th in college football. He inherited an offense that only scored 19 points a game the year before. What did they do in year 2? They went from being a 4-8 team in 2017 and scored 20.9 points per game to the next year, a team that went 11-2 and scored 34.9 points per game. And then you look at what they did at LSU in 2022. They were a good offense in 2022, showed some flashes, had some inconsistent moments. You could tell they were kind of getting used to the system. Team goes 10-4. They score 34.5 points per game. Then they go out in year 2 the next year, and they jumped 10 points. They went from 34.5, which is a solid number, played in the SEC title game, to the next year they scored 45.5 points per game. So what makes me think that Notre Dame is going to be better in year 2 of the Mike Denbrock offense? I can use Google. That's what makes me feel better about it, because I saw them do that at Notre Dame. I saw him make the year 2 offense at Notre Dame a lot better. I saw him make the year 2. I mean, and here's the crazy thing. His jump from 2022 since LSU at 34.5 points per game to 45.5 points per game the next year was not even his best improvement. His best improvement came from year 1 to year 2 at Cincinnati, where they made over, I think it was almost a 14-point jump in the second year. So, yeah, that makes me think that they're going to be better in year 2 than they were in year 1, with Mike Denbrock. So, of course, that's a big thing for me. The offense is going to be better. Knowing what he likes better as players is going to help them. Him knowing what his players are good at now is going to help him. Spring can only tell you so much. You need that whole season to kind of work it out. I mean, you look at what Mike Denbrock did with the offense coming out of the first bye. We broke it down at the time, Trev. That's a different looking offense. Why? Because he had a much better idea of what Riley Leonard was good at and what he wasn't good at.
Yep.
Well, now he's got a whole season of that evidence with his football team. And now they know the system better. They can build on the things they established last year and take it to another level. And I'm very confident it's going to be like, there's nothing for me to believe that of the 4 teams he's been a coordinator for, this is now his 4th. There's nothing to make me believe that this is going to be the first offense he's ever had that takes a step back. There's nothing for me to believe that from what he's done. And then also just looking at the town football team.
Yeah, facts.
It's like, there's just nothing that makes me think this offense won't be better because we've seen it. And I'm a big believer saying you can feel a certain way, but what does the evidence tell you? Well, the evidence tells me that Mike Denbrock's a perfect 3 for 3 so far and making big strides on his side of the ball when he takes over as coordinator. And that's something I'm very much looking forward to seeing now that he's got this stop at Notre Dame with a very talented team.
And I believe that the personnel that he has at his disposal going into this season more directly fits what he wants to do as an offensive coordinator as opposed to some of the pieces that he had last year. Obviously, I love what the offense did last year because they played for a national championship. They won 2 major bowls in back-to-back weeks. It was fantastic. Not the offense he wanted to run, but he made the most of it. Why? Because that's what really, really good coaches do. But now he has a quarterback that can push the ball down the field. And I say a quarterback because any one of those 3 guys can push the ball down the field vertically. We've seen it. We've seen all 3 of them do it. Steve, Kenny, and CJ. And honestly, I believe that Blake Hebert could do it too. I don't know if he could do it right now, but I know that he can. I know that's why he was brought into South Bend. One of the reasons.
Well, with his arm talent, there's no doubt he can push the ball down the field. There's a lot of other things that maybe as a freshman he may struggle with, but when you watch that kid's film,
oh yeah,
push the ball down the field.
Oh yeah. But then you start looking at some of the skilled positions. Obviously, he knows what he can do with Jeremiah Love. But you start looking at the receivers, tight ends included. He has a tight end that can push the ball in the seam vertically with Eli Raridan. He now has a different arsenal of receivers. Little bit better after the catch. Malachi Fields isn't on campus yet. We got glimpses of what Micah Gilbert could do last spring. Very promising. We know that Cam Williams and KK Smith can stretch the field vertically. And we watched Jaden Greathouse have back-to-back breakout games in the 2 biggest moments of the season. And so for me,
that was still fun to watch going back and looking at those highlights.
Meh.
I was doing that last night, just watching the Jaden Greathouse highlights from the 2 playoff games.
Oh yeah. Oh
that was
yeah.
a lot of fun.
So much fun. And that is now what he has to build on. With an arsenal of running backs, like that is now that's the safeguard. Like you have your foundation, it's time to elevate and build off of that. Whereas last year it was kind of like this kind of has to be the offense based on we'll have moments in the passing game, which they did. They had moments against Army, moments against Navy, moments against USC, moments in the postseason. But now I'm confident that instead of those being, fleeting moments, it's going to be just what the offense is, with the foundation of still being really, really good in the running back room and up front on the offensive line. Year 2 for Mike Denbrock is something that I absolutely cannot wait for because that's what made me excited. Don't get me wrong. I was so pumped that he came back to South Bend for 2024. But for me, it was 24 is going to be fun. 25 is going to be nuts. And I firmly believe that because of all the things that you listed off. And so couldn't be more on the same page with you with that one because that's going to be so much fun to watch go down. And we get to start seeing it here soon.
The other thing that I think we know and I feel comfortable with, Trev, and I think this one's a little bit more debatable, is I do believe this defense has a lot of star power. It's not all established yet, but when I just look at the God-given ability, there's a lot of star power. And that's been one of the big concerns in past years is when you would lose studs, you didn't always have the similar type of players to step in and replace them. And there was always kind of that big drop-off. And I see less of that now. I see more like, okay, who's going to have to replace Jack Kaiser, who's a really good football player for Notre Dame last year? Did a lot of really good things. Who's going to replace him? I don't know. Is it going to be Kingston, Jaden Alsbury, Jalen Sneed, Madden Framo? I don't know which one, but I do know this. Whoever wins that battle is going to be really good. You know, you look at Boubacar Traore, and now, of course, for the spring, that doesn't matter as much, but you look at Bryce Young. You look at Logan Thomas even as a role player. You look at Leonard Moore. You look at a Don Schuler. You know, you look at some of those guys, Christian Gray. I mean, you talk to people around the team, and they'll tell you that when Christian Gray's locked in and focused, he's as good as anybody they have on that football team. That's what people in the program will tell you. This isn't my opinion. It's what people in the program will tell you. And you know, there's a lot of potential star power there. Now, we don't know who is or isn't going to step up, but here's the deal. If you don't have the ability, you can't be that guy. You know, like, look, I could have wanted all I wanted in when I was coming out of high school. I could have said, hey, man, I want to be the next John Elway. And I could have been that if it wasn't for the fact I wasn't tall enough, big enough, fast enough, or didn't throw well enough. Other than that, I felt like I was right on par to be that kind of guy, right? I mean, like, it didn't matter how hard I worked. I was never going to be that guy. You know what I mean? You got to have the ability. Thank you, Irish English. I appreciate that, man. But you got to have that ability to be that kind of guy. And there's a lot of guys like that on this defense. And so am I confident that some star power will emerge? Yeah. Do I know who it is yet? No, I don't. But this is the least concerned I've been about a team that's as unproven as this defense is. Or I shouldn't say unproven, because it's not. But this is the most confident I've been in a team that's lost the kind of star power that they lost. That I'm like, yeah, it sucks, but they're going to be okay. And it's kind of like, so this is what it's like being an Alabama fan or a Georgia fan, or, you know what I mean? Where it's like, man, it sucks that you lost this guy, but you're going to be okay because so-and-so is like, this is a true reload moment for the Notre Dame defense, in my opinion. And that gives me a lot of confidence about where this football team is.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. You look at who's coming back and what the pieces are, and man, I mean, Christian Gray and Leonard Moore have the opportunity to be the best cornerback duo that Notre Dame has had in quite some time. And that's saying something, considering they've had some pretty good cornerback duos over the last couple seasons, I'd say. You go through and you look at what a Don Schuler's might be able to do. And we're talking about how replacing Xavier Watts isn't a one-man job. Would it ultimately shock you if a Don Schuler stepped up and had a similar impact to what Xavier Watts had last year? It wouldn't shock me.
In a different way, agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if a Don Schuler's going to rip off 6 or 7 interceptions next year.
Right. But maybe only has 3 or 4 again, but he has a lot more impact hits and forced fumbles like he had. I mean, it's the same type of impact, just in a different way, but the same type of impact. It wouldn't shock me. No. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but it wouldn't shock me.
No. You look at, I mean, we've had conversations before, and you and I are under the belief that Notre Dame's linebacking core is going to be top 3 in the country when they finish, you know? And so you look at all the tools that they have coming back. When the biggest unknown is the front 4, but that front 4 still consists of Abubakar coming back off of injury, Bryce Young, Logan Thomas, Josh Burnham, Jason Onye, Gabriel Rubio, Donnie Heinisch, Jared Dawson. Like, you know what I mean? When that is the question mark, that's a really good spot to be in, because I still draw the analogy of you go and you look at previous years and previous defenses in the last decade. And if those teams had that coming back, I'd be like, man, this might be a really good defensive line unit, and we'd have questions elsewhere. Yeah, I'm with you. Notre Dame's defense, the potential is absolutely there. I don't know who it is. There's some that I think are more in the lead than others, but that's what's fun about the spring, is there's always going to be somebody that comes out and emerges that you didn't really, not that you didn't think anything of, but that kind of surprised you, of like, I knew they were going to get there. I didn't think they'd get there this early. And that's what I love about the spring.
Last thing for me, this is what we know about this football team. it's a lot bigger.
Man.
This is going to be one of the bigger Notre Dame teams we've seen in a while. And I know that the focus can be on some of the guys who aren't bigger. But, I mean, you look at the running back room, it's going to be the same as last year, except guys are now a year older, you're stronger. You're going to add Jabron Payne maybe to that rotate, or Keedron Young to that rotation, who's 229. You're talking about receivers. Great House is over 6 feet tall. Micah Gilbert, 6'2". Cam Williams is 6'2". You're going to add Malachi Fields in the fall at 6'4". Your number one tight end is 6'7", 250. Your starting offensive line, if it's what we think it is, you're going to still have a 6'4", 294-pound left tackle. You're going to still have your 6'6", 291-pound right tackle. But your interior is going to be Billy Schrouth, who's a year older, a year bigger. You're going to add Charles Jagasol to the mix. You've got 6'7", 321, Sullivan Absher battling for a job. You've got 6'7", 323, Gerby Lambert battling for a job. You're going to be a lot bigger there. I'm looking at the defensive line depth chart. You're 6'4", 251, Josh Burnham. You've got 6'7", 258, Bryce Young. Your Vipers are going to be you've got, Junior doesn't have that length, but Boubacar 6'4", 250. Logan Thomas is 6'4" with super long arms, and he's going to be over 230 at least next year. Defensive tackle, get your projected 3 technique is 316. Your number 2 is 291. You've got a smaller nose tackle behind him. You've got 302-pound Jared Dawson, 302-pound Armo Mukum, 320-pound Sean Sevillano, 297-pound Devin Houston. You're going to get 320-pound Davion Dixon back in the fall. At linebacker, where they've been very undersized in recent years, you're going to have 6'2", 240-pound Drake Bowen, 6'3", 240-pound Kingston Viliama Asa. I mean, your corners are both over 6 feet tall. Your safeties, Don Schuler at 6 feet tall is one of the smallest guys you have. Don Schuler is closer in size to Notre Dame's starting Mike linebacker in 2020, than that guy is to the current starting Mike linebacker. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to be a much bigger team next year, a much longer team. And we saw it this year to a degree, but you're really seeing the what Marcus Freeman wants in a program. He wants length. He wants athleticism, but length is so important to what he wants to recruit. And you can really see that when you look at his football team. And they're definitely trying to get bigger. Yeah. And we won't fully see that on the offensive line until the next couple years, but we're already starting to see that right now with the size of this. This is going to be a much bigger team where, for the most part, you don't have to be like, you hope your try-hard guys can hold up at the point of attack. And, Donovan Heinisch is undersized, but Donovan Heinisch showed in the postseason that he can go against the best offenses in the country and more than hold his own. You just better hope you have someone to be in there with him that doesn't force him to play 40 snaps a game. Mm-hmm. But as part of rotation, he brings value. That's your small guy, where last year you had a bunch of small guys that were playing. It's a little bit different now. So that's where I'm at with this one. And just kind of my final piece of what we know about this team. Let's talk next about what we don't know, Trev. And these are the things that we're going to have to learn. And here's the first one. And look, we talk about a lot, but what we don't know, we don't have a clue who the starting quarterback's going to be. And we don't know how that battle is going to impact the team. Like, we know it will. We know someone's going to start. We know it will have an impact on the team, positively or negatively. What we don't know, who is it going to be and what's that impact going to be?
The big unknown heading into this offseason, man. And I was thinking this the entire time that I was watching the show yesterday, your and Sean's show, the RTCF. And it was, look, it's not the who, it's the how. And I am so interested and slightly nervous at the how the starting quarterback gets elected and how that process goes. But it's the biggest unknown. And that is my one pause of talking about this team as being that title contending team, because all of the other pieces are there for the reasons that we just talked about. They have size, they have athleticism, they're deep, they have experience. But the one thing is they don't have that leading candidate at quarterback. And there's other schools going through a quarterback battle this offseason or have question marks.
The majority of preseason top 10 teams are going through almost the exact same situation Notre Dame's going through. Texas is different and Oregon's is a little different because those guys have played a little bit more. but they're far from proven quarterbacks. So that's an interesting aspect to this team, Trevor, is because there are so many. Ohio State's going through it. Texas is going through it to a degree. Georgia's going through it to a degree. I mean, there's so many teams in the top 10. I could name others. Alabama, Ole Miss. There's so many teams that are just that they're asking the same questions at quarterback that Notre Dame is asking. I think Penn State is trying to think of Penn State is one of the few preseason top 10 teams that you look at and say, okay, that's who their quarterback's going to be.
Yeah,
and
Penn State,
because it's
Clemson.
The guy that was there last year. Clemson's another one, yeah. But a lot of teams are going through the same thing Notre Dame is going through, and that helps. It certainly helps. It gives them, I think, a little bit of breathing room where they don't have to fall too far behind all those teams that have established quarterbacks coming back. So it certainly helps. So, and it's similar to offensive line, Travis. We don't know who the offensive line is going to be. We don't know. Even if I told you, I know for a fact that the starting offensive line is going to be Anthony Knapp, Charles Jagusah, Billy Schrouth, Ashton Craig, and Emil Wagner. You can't say with 100% certainty that you know who of those five who's going to play where. I mean, I could say that in a certain scenario, all five are playing in a different position. I mean, like would I be shocked if like all of a sudden, and I'm just going to throw like really random, Emil moves to left, Knapp moves to right tackle, Jagusah moves to left guard, Schrouth moves to, Craig moves to, or no, let me go here. Left tackle's Emil Wagner. Your right tackle is Charles Jagusah. Your left guard is Billy Schrouth. Your right guard is Ashton Craig, and your center is Anthony Knapp. I wouldn't predict that, but it wouldn't shock me if that came to be, or I could say, hey, okay, well, Craig won't start because of the injury, but they're going to throw Sullivan Absher in there. That still doesn't tell us who's going to start where. It could be that they move Anthony Knapp to right tackle, and they move. There's so many different scenarios where guys could move around that you still don't know what the makeup of the offensive line is going to be. And then the other part of that question is, are we going to get the best possible 5-man rotation? Because Joe Rudolph has done some things I don't like at Notre Dame. He's done some things I like at Notre Dame. We've talked a lot about the improvements this line made, toughness-wise, physicality-wise, moving their feet better, and all those type of things. But what anyone that's being honestly objective should be able to tell you, this is my opinion, is that the things that have happened post-injuries have shown us that our doubts about whether or not he put the best five out there were proven to be right, that he didn't. When the offensive line got so much better when Billy Schrouth and Ashton Craig jumped in the lineup, and it can't just be attributed to they played 3 bad teams. When you look at how much better the O-line was when Rocco and Schrouth were both in it the rest of the year. I mean, I did the article the other day talking about Schrouth and Wagner and how much better Notre Dame's run game production was with Billy Schrouth in the game compared to when he wasn't. Well, those coincided with, and you look at even more so if you just look at where they were running the football when he came back the second time, when it was also him and Rocco, compared to games he wasn't in there. Well, that tells you something. So will Joe Rudolph in year 3 make the proper choices as far as not even who the 5 are, but that's part of it. But then also, where do those 5 play? That could mean Anthony Knapp's at left tackle and Charles Jagusah's right tackle. And it's just kind of status quo. It could mean that. But as long as it means that, because that's how it shakes out best, not because of any other things that may factor in. So we still don't know what that's going to look like. And these 2 things are going to have a huge impact: who wins the job, and what it means to the locker room, and Joe Rudolph's ability to get your best 5 together. Doesn't mean your 5 most talented, right? It just means your best 5-man group. Getting that together is going to be important. And in both situations, I'm purposely not telling you what I think it should be, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if the guys that I prefer win jobs. It just matters that what I say needs to happen happens. Real quarterback battle. Somebody wins it. Somebody wins over the whole locker room. Somebody wins over the whole team and earns that job and separates it. I don't care who it is. That Joe Rudolph puts the best 5 out there. What I think it may be It may not be that way. But as long as it's the right choice and he makes the right choice, whether I like it or not, is all that matters. And if those two things get answered positively, this offense is going to be really, really, really good. If they don't, then that's going to be big stumbling blocks for this football team. And then the third part, Trev, and I want to get your thoughts on this because I kind of talked about it earlier, is things we don't know is we don't know how this defense is going to react to Chris Ash and how they're going to perform under Chris Ash. I talked about how much I'm looking forward to seeing him. At the end of the day, whether you love the hire or don't love the hire, what we can all admit is none of us know how he's going to do at Notre Dame, which would be true if they hired Jim Leonard or Jim Knowles or whoever they hired. We don't know. If Dave Aranda was like pulled a Chip Kelly and was like, dude, I'm tired of being a head coach. I'm going to come back and be the D coordinator at Notre Dame. I have no clue how that's going to go. And that's the same thing with Chris Ash. And how it goes, Trev, is going to have a big impact on how good this football team is going to be next year.
I'm extremely interested to see how he interacts with the other defensive coaches because I'm under the belief, and I do agree with what you said earlier when you gave your thoughts on this, but on the flip side, the one thing that I will say is I do believe that you recruit a certain kind of player at Notre Dame who is willing to take coaching, I think potentially from whoever it's given to. Now, I am going to be keeping an eye on how it's being received by the players. I'm going to be very interested to see how things are going to be perceived by some of the coaches because you have guys like Mike Mickens and Al Washington as guys that like they've built relationships with Al Golden and they got accustomed to doing things a certain way. And the defensive coaching staff outside of the DC is still very much intact. Marty Biagi's coming back. He did work with the safeties. Mike Mickens is back. Al Washington's back. Max Bulla's back. But then the one caveat, the new piece, is Chris Ash, and he's the overarching defensive coordinator. Now, the flip side of what I'm saying is, but these are adults. They've worked for other coaches than just Al Golden. They would know potentially how to handle things better than players. But I'm really interested to see how they work together as a cohesive unit and what that's going to look like because it is new. You hear some of the things you've heard about Chris Ash before and how he interacts with some people. I also didn't really get to see what Al Golden was like in practice. Some of that I'm going to be talking to you about, obviously, when I'm up on campus and what did this look like in previous regimes. Not that it's good or bad. I just don't know. I just don't know what it looks like. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at. And so that's what I'm interested to see with Chris Ash is on top of how he interacts with the players and how the players receive him. It's how does the defensive coaching staff take to how he wants to format his practices? How do they take to, okay, hey, I want this to be done this way? Because, yes, I understand in his introductory press conference, it was, I didn't come here to change Notre Dame's defense, but you need to run it your way. You need to be authentic. And I'm going to be interested to see how some of the other coaches take to that as well. Not that I'm predicting that they're not going to like it. It's just all new chemistry that you have to work out and see how that's going to go. So that's where I'm at with that one.
Last one for me, Trev, is we don't necessarily know who is going to fill all the voids by the departed stars on defense and starters on defense. We don't know all of them. We know some of them, but what we definitely don't know is to what degree will that production and that level of play be replaced? What we know that Gabriel Rubio and Donovan Heinisch and Jared Dawson, at the very least, are going to play a lot this year. We anticipate Jason Onye, if everything goes according to plan this offseason, also being a guy that's going to play a ton. Elijah Hughes is going to battle. Armel Mukum's going to battle. There's a lot of guys that are in competition. What we don't know is will they be able to play at the level that we've seen from that group in the past couple of years? Will they even be able to raise their level of play? Because the one thing you say, as good as the defensive tackle part was at parts of the season, there's other parts of the season where they weren't very good. I mean, the first game they were okay. Games 2 to 4, not that great, to be honest with you. And started to step up against Louisville and all that type of stuff. But there was periods of last year where the D tackle group wasn't all that great. 2023, same way. There was times that D tackle rotation was dynamic, and other times they were just kind of okay. We think we know that whoever starts at linebacker is going to be longer than Jack Kaiser and is going to be pretty talented. But will they be able to play at his level or surpass it? We don't know. Will kind of feel like Don Schuler is going to be tasked with replacing Xavier Watts' production, but who's going to replace Don Schuler's production? Can anyone do that? We don't know. Same thing with Devontae Smith at nickel with Jordan Clark. So there's a lot of question marks there where we know Devontae Smith is going to replace him barring injury, but how's he going to play? And so those are all things that that we still don't know. Even if you think you know who's going to do it, we don't necessarily know how well they're going to do it. And that's something that I think we're going to start to get a little bit of a glimpse of this spring. At least I hope that we get a little bit of a glimpse of. I hope we're coming out of spring being like, that's the most motivated and productive I've seen Gabriel Rubio in his career. I've never seen him whoop the Notre Dame offensive line as consistently as he whooped the offensive line. Boy, Jason Onye came back like a man possessed. He's got something to prove, boy. Man, Devontae Smith is the real deal, buddy. Or, man, Luke Talich or Bronte Johnson or whoever. I just want to start to see it. We think we know, but we just need to see it. And that's kind of my final what we don't know about this football team. And that same thing is kind of true at quarterback, but I feel like we've kind of addressed that. We all know there's pretty big shoes to fill for those guys, and quarterback's a different animal. So that's my final one, Trev. Any others that you look at and say things that you feel like we know or we don't know about this football team as we head into spring?
Nothing that I don't think we've already covered. I mean, it's pretty overarching and it's obvious, but I do think it needs to be stated. There were a lot of questions last year going into the season. It's like, okay, like this is kind of a prove it year. Is Marcus Freeman the guy? Is he the guy for Notre Dame? And within 7 days, that answer was a resounding yes to a big old question mark for many people. I am very confident that now I feel very confident in saying that, yeah, Notre Dame has their guy. And I know it might seem a little like some people might be like, yeah, Trev, no duh. But I think it needs to be said because that has been a question mark for them for all the different moves and all of the different, all right, well, yeah, new defensive coordinator, we'll see. I think Juwan Sider, his hire is not gone under the radar, but he's somebody we haven't talked about today. I am interested to see like what his dynamic is going to be.
Almost kind of like an assumption that he's going to be good. That's fair. That's a very good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So his and I'd file that under the we don't know. And it's not, we don't know if he's going to be a good coach. I'm very confident that he's going to be a good coach, but what's his dynamic with the other guys going to look like at practice? Because Jay Love and JD Price and Aeneas and all those guys were very high on and very close with Dylan McCullough. So how does Coach Sider come in and what does that dynamic look like? So a lot of different things for me, but those are the only two that I would add. But we covered all the other ones, man. I mean, I'm ready to, again, we said it at the start of the show. The speculation won't be over at spring, but it's going to start to scratch that itch a little bit. And it's going to start laying some of the seeds of the things we're going to start seeing in the summer and in the fall. It's like, yeah, okay, we saw a little bit of that in the spring. So good or bad. And so that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
So that's going to put a bow on our spring preview. Tomorrow, we're going to have a mailbag next, but tomorrow we'll obviously, Trevor and I, before Biso Hold, we'll talk about what we saw at practice. It won't be a ton. It's a 1 hour practice, and we only get the first 4 periods of it. So we're not going to have a lot of observations of how guys look basically in uniform and who's where, things like that. We'll do the best we can to give you guys as much detail as possible, but it's one less period than we even used to get in the short practices anyway. So, but just be prepared for that. And then we'll jump into the Biso Hold. So if you're a member of irishbreakdown.com, boards at irishbreakdown.com, Salty has already put up the thread to get your Biso Hold question in there. So go ahead and get that thrown in and we'll answer those questions tomorrow. But before we get to that next section, folks, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. If you're listening via podcast platform, we would love a 5-star review, whether it's on the Irish Breakdown channel or the CFB Nation channel. And as always, best way to support what we're doing at Irish Breakdown is to sign up for the membership for the premium board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So, Trevor, last thing we're going to do today is we're going to answer some questions. We have some mailbag questions for today from our Irish Breakdown listeners and our subscribers. And if you guys want to get a comment to the top, like Lou Holtz Thunder and Bolts right here, who has a super chat, you can go ahead and throw that super chat in, and of course, we'll make sure that one gets answered as soon as we see it. But Lou Holtz, Thunder and Bolts, thank you for your super chat. And he says, life is better when Notre Dame football is in the picture, and even more so with the content from IB. Spring ball, baby. Let's go. Thank you so much, man. And Trev, I am very excited for spring ball. I got to tell you, man, I'm very excited about it. It's been this offseason, it's ready for some football. Rob Osgo to super chat. Thank you, Rob. He says, might sound crazy, but how about this spring practices are about fundamentals? Sure, position battles are important, but hammer focus on the basics. Rob said this very early in the show. He said this before we kind of got to that. But Trevor, I think he's making a really good point that if you're not as concerned about the bang bang in the spring because of the long season, that makes it a great period to focus on the fundamentals, the basics, the new install, making sure you're perfecting certain foundational principles of your football team and really all phases of the game.
100%. The work that they're going to put in now, albeit it might be a little bit tedious, it's going to pay so many dividends once you get to July and August and September, because you can still draw back to, hey, the stuff that we laid the foundation in the spring, that's what carries them through October and November and December. And so, yeah, it's going to be really fun to watch how they do it and how it goes down. I can't wait to see it.
All right, next question we have here is from, let's go here. Josh Miller, where does the new recruiting hire sit in the hierarchy of the staff? Bavacqua, Freeman, Martin. First of all, Bavacqua has to be looked at differently. Bavacqua's not involved in the day-to-day aspects of it. And we also had a question from Justin Kane. What do you think of the new recruiting hire out of Colorado? So we have two questions about that. I want to get to both of those. We're obviously talking about Jordan Blake, who is he's the new director of player personnel that was hired. There's one more hire to be announced. I was told that it was going to be today, but we'll see if that does get announced today at some point in time. But we'll obviously talk about it once it gets made official. But look, there's only so much I've been able to learn in less than 24 hours of him being hired. But here's what I've been able to learn so far. And what I've learned so far, I really like it. Last year was his first full class at Colorado. They only signed, I think, 14 or 16 high school players, so they didn't rank real high in the points-driven system. But if you look at the Rivals rankings, they ranked 18th in the country in average star ranking at Colorado with the class they brought in. There were some very good players they brought in. He was in charge of that. More importantly, I love the fact that he has had a focus on Texas. This is a kid that played high school football in Texas. He went to Baylor out of high school. He's actually got – it's funny, he's got a Rivals profile that's not – and a 247 profile that's like not all that old. Like Marcus Freeman's like from 2002 where he looks like Debo. You know, it's like it doesn't look like Marcus Freeman. Like this guy's slice is like from like a decade ago. Played 3 years at Baylor as a defensive back and then played his last year at SMU. Jumped immediately into recruiting, and within a year or two at SMU was named their recruiting coordinator. Had a stint where like he went to TCU, but then kind of came back to SMU pretty quickly as their recruiting coordinator there, and then of course was hired at Colorado to be sort of their assistant recruiting guy that focused on high school. So they had a group of people that focused on high school, and I believe he led that, and then they had a group of people that kind of focused on the portal. He's John Blake's son. John Blake was a longtime assistant coach, also spent some years as the head coach at Oklahoma. John Blake was known as a very good recruiter in his day. Whether it was, however it was attained, he was always known as a guy that could get recruits. And this is a kid that grew up in a coach's home. So I think he understands the game to a degree. And I do know that they vetted this hire out a bit. Vetted meaning that's not the right word. There were a lot of people in consideration for this job. So it leads me to believe that this is someone that Marcus Freeman saw a lot of potential in. And here's the big reason, as I was talking about earlier, is this is a guy whose like entire life basically is Texas football. Played high school football in Texas, played college football in Texas, and all but like a year and a half coached or recruited in the state of Texas as far as at a school in the state of Texas. That's a state that Notre Dame absolutely wants and needs to have a bigger impact in. And to hire a guy that's got the connections that he's going to have in the last 6 years of just being involved in recruiting the state of Texas, plus connections he'll have having played football in Texas in high school, is going to be enormous for Notre Dame. And it's very obvious that Texas is a very important state to this football staff and should be. I've said before, Texas, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina all need to get paid a lot more attention to for Notre Dame moving forward. And more so than Florida and Louisiana and some of those other states that they put a lot of emphasis in. These need to be prime states for Notre Dame. In that regard, I think it's a great hire. How good is he? That I don't know. We'll find that out to answer Justin Kane's question about what I think about the new recruiting hire. Everything I've heard is strong. Usually how it is so far. I don't have a lot of red flags so far, other than, he's going to have to make a transition recruiting at Notre Dame, et cetera, et cetera. But so did Chad Bowden going from Cincinnati to Notre Dame. So did Marcus Freeman, who'd never coached at a program like Notre Dame. The best Power 5 school he was ever at was Purdue. And so if you can, I've said this a million times, Trev, if you got the chops, you got the chops, man. If you can recruit, you can recruit. Yes, you're going to be able to have to learn. This is how we do it at Notre Dame. This is what you're selling at Notre Dame, but that's not hard to do, guys. Trust me, it's not. If you've got the chops, you've got the chops. So, and from everything I've heard so far, this is a guy that's got the chops. Now, where does he sit on the hierarchy? So, what I was told yesterday is he reports to Mike Martin. So he's like part of Mike Martin's staff, and he'll with the focus on recruiting. And how it was explained to me is basically he's going to do what he's going to have the role that Chad Bowden had before being promoted to GM. Sort of that lead recruiter guy. Don't know that he'll quite have the same authority over some of the other guys like Carter Allman the way that Chad did, but that's what I was told his responsibility is as far as going out and recruiting. I don't know what that means for like him leading the recruiting office or not. I think that now more falls under the GM. But what I mean by what the role Chad Bowden had, which is, dude, you're our ace recruiter. Your job is to go out there and recruit. And my understanding is that's going to be his primary responsibility, is that role that Chad served from a recruiting standpoint. Not so much from a who reports to him. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just sort of like what his duties are. He's going to be called upon to be a top recruiter. And in that regard, there's going to be some good things from it. Broke Neck Boy asked overall opinions of Pot of Gold yesterday. Look, I think it was a great event. I'm going to have some stuff on the message board about, kind of recapping it. We talked a lot about this, Broke Neck Boy. Our whole beginning of our show yesterday was talking about Pot of Gold. So I would encourage you to go listen to that segment yesterday and listen to us talk about that yesterday. Don't want to rehash a lot of that today, and I'll have more of it on the board, but heavy emphasis in California. I don't think that was intention. Like that wasn't a coincidence. Heavy influence in Texas and North Carolina, which I was very encouraged to see. Brian Smith on the message board I have a post about Pot of Gold offers, and Brian Smith went and counted all the Pot of Gold offers that we've reported so far and counted up the number. I'm trying to find that post that he did, but he counted up the number of from each state, and California was number one with 20. And the next highest was Texas with 9, North Carolina with 8, Florida was 7, Georgia was 6, 4 in Bama, 3 in Illinois, 3 in Mississippi, 3 in Nevada, 3 in Ohio, 3 in Pennsylvania, 3 in Washington, and then the rest were 2 or less. So you saw a sort of a big state emphasis there, a lot of highly ranked kids, some really impressive film, and a ton of defensive linemen. I mean, a ton. So, and there's some dudes in that group, man. So, but beyond that, I would encourage you to listen to the beginning of our show yesterday for just a little bit more, but strong impressions, good impressions. I like what they're doing. And, I mean, but like, you can only take it so far. It's an event that gets your foot in the door. Like Sean said yesterday, this is the day where Notre Dame is the biggest game in town, really the only game in town from a recruiting standpoint. And it's been a great resource in the past. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it's a great first step in regard to that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I asked this question, Trev, and we'll get kind of started with some other things. So John Emerson asked, how far do you see next season playoff run?
We talked about this a little bit before, John, when Brian and I broke down kind of the floor of this team and what the expectation was. What I believe to be for a lot of these teams is, in the 4-team playoff, the expectation was, you make the playoff, or, teams that have the potential to be national championship contenders, like the goal is to make it back to that game. I think now with the expanded playoffs and how many games you have to win, especially when you're in Notre Dame's position where as of right now, you're not going to get a bye week. When you're a title contender, I think the goal is making it back to the semifinals. In the same way that in the NCAA tournament, it's always coined the road to the Final Four. And that's how I view this expanded. I talked about that when I was on with Bill Bender, and that's kind of how I view this new expanded college football playoff is once you get to the semifinals, anything can happen. It's a smaller sample size, but that Orange Bowl, either team would have won. Like if let's just say I had never seen that game before and somebody put it on the TV, and then obviously you take the Notre Dame bias out of it for me, and you stop it with about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and you ask me who wins that game, I might probably going to say Penn State, because at the 10-minute mark in the fourth quarter is when Riley Leonard threw his second interception, and then they went down and scored.
Right before that play, you'd have been like, Notre Dame's got all the momentum now. Like first half, Penn State's going to win this game. Early in the fourth quarter, Notre Dame's got all the momentum. Like Penn State's toast. Then that pick happens. They go down and score. Oh man, Notre Dame's in trouble now. Like they had their shot, they took it, they fell short. They're not gonna win now. It was kind of that back and forth, man, where like you just both teams had shots to win it throughout that game. That's what you love about that type of.
Oh yeah,
Texas Ohio State game was similar to that too, man. It's just like play here, play there. Both teams had shots to win it, and but like you said, man, you get to that level, anything can happen.
Yep,
anything can happen.
Yep, and so John, that's my expectation, especially with who's on the coaching staff, who they have on their roster, who they have coming back. My expectation for at least the near future for Notre Dame is going to be making it back to the semifinals. Now, that evaluation can always change as the season goes on. After Notre Dame beat Texas A&M down at Kyle Field in week 1, I would have told you, yes, I absolutely expect them to make a playoff run, make it to the semifinals. If you would have asked me Sunday, September 8th, if Notre Dame was going to make it to the semifinals of the college football playoff, my answer would have been what it was. Let's focus on the guys beating Purdue first. And then you can start evaluating as the season goes on. And then obviously after the month of November, I was very confident that Notre Dame would go on a run once again. But to answer your question, how far do I see it? Goal is the semifinals. Notre Dame is most likely going to end up hosting a college football playoff game again in South Bend. Notre Dame at home at night against a high caliber opponent needs to be a place that is feared to go play at. And I think it's going to slowly return to that mantra. So that puts you in a spot where you have to win one neutral site game to then make it back to the semifinals. So short answer, John, I see it being at least to the semifinals of the playoffs based on how this team is put together. Now, a lot of the things that we talked about in the earlier segments of this show and how the spring starts to go and it lays the foundation to this team, we're going to start to get a lot of those questions answered. So really, really excited for it. But that's where I'm at, man.
Next question is from eRock986. With some teams dropping their spring games, do you think Notre Dame will follow? Could this be the last blue gold game? It's possible. It's inevitable in the current landscape because what you all have to understand is this. As teams start to chase more and more donor dollars, they care less and less and less about the normal everyday fan. They care less and less about how the decisions they make impact people like us. Just the normal fan. They don't care that, and this is true for Notre Dame and everybody else, they don't care about the fact that the spring game for a lot of people in the middle and lower classes are the only opportunity that they can afford to go watch the Notre Dame team play in Notre Dame Stadium. They don't care. There's nobody at Notre Dame that cares about that I know of. Nobody. Because if they did, things wouldn't go the way that they go. I wouldn't be hearing from different sources about the fact that this could be the last blue gold game, especially the last blue gold game in the format that they're going to do it. All these teams that are canceling spring practices, they're going to do these little skills competitions and things like that. It's not the same. It's not the same as a game. It isn't. But at the end of the day, as I've said all along, it's another slap in the face to the everyday fan. And all these decisions are just slaps in the face to the everyday fan. But you know what we continue to do as fans? We continue to take it and say, thank you, sir, may I have another. I keep saying this. They're going to continue to crap on us, limit our access as media, which limits your access. Well, yeah, but we put these 30-second videos out that show half a play. It's not the same. And we're going to say, thank you, may I have another. They're going to continue to do more of that type of stuff where we get less and less access, where you all get less and less access, where things get more expensive, where things are even like the national title game is on ESPN, not on normal cable. Thank you, sir, may I have another. They're going to eliminate spring practices. Thank you, sir, may I have another. We're going to keep taking it. We can plan on, this is killing college football. Well, we keep watching, so it's not killing it that much. We keep buying the gear. We keep doing all this. And so they're going to keep doing it, just so you guys know, until the fans as a whole just kind of to say, I'm sick of it. I'm done. They're going to keep doing it because there's no consequences for them to do this. And I would assume that Notre Dame is going to follow. From things I've been told, they're going to follow suit. And it's sad. It's disappointing, but it's to be expected because, it just even if you want to have the blue and gold game where you sit most of your starters, so what? Like, a lot of people care more about the young guys that we don't know about anyway. I don't care about seeing Leonard Moore in the spring. I don't care about seeing Jeremiah Love in the spring. I know who they are. I want to see what Kedron Young's going to do at running back this spring because he hasn't done a whole lot. I want to see, what Carson Hobbs is going to do this spring. I want to see Cree Thomas this spring. I don't care about watching Drake Bowen this spring. I want to see Madden Framo. Not that I think Madden Framo is going to take Drake Bowen's job. It's just like, I know who Drake is. You know what I mean? I've never seen this kid play. I just watched Drake play 16 games. It's not, that's how a lot of fans are. They want to see that young guy. So then make it a young guy game or something like that. But let them play football and let the fans come and attend, because the way that you charge prices for home games means there's a lot of parents that have, especially parents like Vince's family. I have a pastor friend in town who's got 5 kids. He can't afford, he has to take one kid at a time to one game a year. That's all he can afford to do, because it's $1,000 for a local guy to take his family of 5 to a football game. Now, counting hotel money. When you count how much it costs to get a ticket, how much it costs to get any kind of concessions for your kids, and then how much it costs to park, you're talking about $1,000 for a family of 5 kids, and even for a family of 3 kids, but just 2 parents, you're starting to get up to about $1,000. Imagine if you have to come from a distance where you got to park, you got to stay at a hotel. You got to stay overnight. And, it's disappointing, but it's going to continue to happen because they care less and less and less about the average fan, because now all their money comes from TV contracts and big donors. So the money they're going to make at the spring game is irrelevant to them. So why do we care? So I would not be shocked if this is their last blue gold game, and I would love it if Notre Dame proved me wrong. Would love it, but I don't think they will. And this isn't a Notre Dame thing. This is a college football thing. This isn't just Notre Dame. This is going to happen more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Broke Neck Boy, feelings of the Ohio State pot of gold post. I don't care. Let Ohio State say what they want to say. They just won a championship. They can say whatever they want. It doesn't bother me either way. I don't care. It doesn't take away from anything I said, and I don't care to give it any oxygen. I thought it like this: if Notre Dame would have beat Ohio State, and Ohio State had some big recruiting day, and Notre Dame's account made some funny comment like that, I'd have been like, got him. So, yeah, it was petty, but it was kind of funny, and whatever. I moved on, and I don't really care. So, that's my opinion of it. I don't care. I thought it was kind of funny, and if the roles were reversed, we'd have loved it. If Notre Dame's Twitter account did that to the team they beat for the championship, we'd love it. So props to them. And outside of that, I don't really care. Move on. That's what when you win it, Trev, that's what you get to do. You get to talk trash to everybody else because you're the champ. Everybody except Michigan because you're the champs. You know what I mean?
Very true.
So that's where I'm at. Your thoughts on it?
I mean, it's annoying. I agree that the fans would love it. I just think the difference is I don't think Notre Dame's Twitter account would have posted something like that because I don't see it. I don't.
Then I'll say this: I would have wanted them to.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I get it. I think it's compounded with how the loss was, how outside of some of our home, like Ohio State fans have been, like Archer in the chat. Mm-hmm. I think just some of the interactions that I had with Ohio State fans leading up to the national championship, how the game went down, and then seeing that, Ohio State is working their way up in the ranks for me of teams that I really could care less about. And that's where I'm at with it. And so, like, it's not just the post in general. I
grew up in Ohio, so I didn't need that post to feel the way that I feel about Ohio State. It doesn't change it. Maybe it's because my disdain for that program can't get any lower. So it's like, it's harmless.
Fair.
It's harmless. So
fair enough.
Yeah. It's from Justin Kane. What are your thoughts on Deion Sanders bringing in another college team to play for the spring game? So I saw this yesterday. Let me try to pull it up so I can give you an idea of what they are talking about real quick. So basically, he said, I would actually like to play the spring game against another team in the spring. That's what I'm trying to do right now. Now, I don't know that there's any rule that limits that. It says, okay, under NCAA bylaws, football teams cannot play against another school in the spring. And so you'd have to get that rule changed, which I wish they would. Honestly, I think Deion Sanders is on to something, Trev. Because if you don't like this notion of, okay, spring, you don't get this, you don't get that. I've said this before, whether it's a period of time in fall camp or in the spring, I would love the idea of, like they do in the NFL at mini camp, where they have like that 3-day workout against another team. I would love that at some point in time. Now, there's some real life concerns. If you're a team, you're like, okay, is this guy going to try to poach my players while he's here on our campus? Let's be honest. And nowadays, NFL teams don't have to worry about that because you can't talk to my players because it's you get tampering and you get hammered big time, But I mean, there'd be head coaches like, hey, let's schedule a scrimmage against this team, and then while we're there, we're going to talk to this kid, or let's have them come to our place, and so we can, you know what I mean? Like, there's that kind of thing that would happen. The other thing is, you're seeing in the NFL, there's like brawls that are constantly happening. You'd have to make sure that coaches understand, guys, we're here to work with each other and challenge each other. But I'd love to see something like that, like we see in the NFL, happen during the spring, where you have a couple, practices where you've got your practice time on your facility, then they will practice after you do on your facility. And then, you'll have some sort of like, okay, we'll do, or you can even go together. I mean, Notre Dame's got 4 fields you can practice on, two turf, 1 indoor, one out there. You can have your practice here. They can have theirs out on the grass field or whatever. And then you come together for some 1-on-1, some 7-on-7, and then maybe a team period at the end. And then maybe you have like a scrimmage at the end. And your blue gold game is this, or maybe your jersey scrimmage is that. And then you have the blue gold game at the end. So instead of having the jersey scrimmage, that scrimmage is against so-and-so. I think that'd be awesome. I think it'd be great for development. There's some stumbling blocks and some roadblocks you'd have to get through, including NCAA rules, to make that happen. But if that was allowed, I think there'd be a lot of benefits to that type of thing in the spring. I just don't know how many other coaches have that appetite, especially in this open portal era. These coaches don't even want to play a game on TV because they're afraid of getting poached. Could you imagine if another team's coaching staff got to be around their players all day? The paranoia that would happen with one of the most paranoid group of people on the planet anyway. I don't know how much of an appetite there is, but I love that Deion is saying it. Now, it's irrelevant because he can't do it, but I think that'd be really good. Really good.
I think it's a cool idea. I've mixed emotions on it, if I'm being honest, because there's some camps that believe that, the NCAA and college football is losing some of its luster because they're turning into the NFL. And this is literally what the NFL does. I think it's going to put some coaches in a bind that are just like, well, we're going to cancel our spring game and really lighten the load in spring because we're going to be playing long seasons and we want to eliminate injuries, but then also potentially hop on board with like flying your team out to another campus to then have essentially like 3 days of a joint practice. Now, from a fan, I would love that. Like, I think it would be great. I just think that current state of college football, some of the things that are being laid down right now would make this a little bit difficult on top of the transfer portal things that you're talking about. And so I think that would be interesting. And also I think it'd be interesting to see how the school aspect is handled from that as well, because it's like they will still have classes to go to. Now, mind you, in the fall, they take some time away.
Like college teams care about that. I mean, like, honestly, in the spring semester, how many times do you think college basketball players show up to class from January 1st till the end of the season being over?
Fair enough. I
mean, everything is online now anyway. I mean, there's a lot of kids who don't go to class in the off season because they just do everything online or have someone else do everything for them online. Let's be honest. So, yeah. A lot of stumbling blocks. That's why it might be better to do in the fall. Like towards the end of
fall camp, like towards the end of summer break. Yeah. And
you won't play a scrimmage. Like in NFL minicamps, they don't have a full-blown scrimmage, I don't believe. They just practice against each other. They do one-on-ones against each other, 7-on-7, and they'll do some team stuff, but it's not like a full-blown 60-minute scrimmage. Because then you're not in school.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, that'd be cool.
So
yeah, the Colts like mini camp stuff that they do, like I'm pretty sure it's free to go to. You just have to go secure tickets. But it's up in Westfield, and I went to one where it was the Lions were there right after they got Jared Goff. And so that was cool. But the most they do will be like a 20-minute team period of and most of the time, like they're the big name players like aren't doing stuff.
Right.
So
I want to respond to this about the spring game from YouTube user. It says, regarding access to practices, do you think that the portal and NIL are factors for limiting access? Access means other teams can see video reports to see the value in players and try to take them. This is just an excuse that teams are using to limit access. That is all. Like, let's be honest. No coach wants the media as a practice. I wouldn't. I understand that. Like, just looking at it just from what I want, not what's best for my players or what's best for the team or what's best for the fans. It's what I would want, as I would not want media at practice. Now you have this, you have an excuse now to not do it, not have these certain things. Guys, listen, if a team wants a kid, they're going to already know about that kid. They're going to see him in high school. Like, every coach in America who's telling you the spring game's not that important is then going to watch a spring game and some kid plays well. So it's like, hey, let's go recruit that Nate Montana kid. Did you see how well he played in the Notre Dame spring game? Hey, let's go get that junior Jabby kid. They already know who like if Kedron Young goes out in the spring game or goes out in the spring and he's balling every day in practice, do you think teams like, oh, who's this Kedron Young kid that Brian Driscoll's talking about on his podcast? We should go recruit him. If they are doing that, then they suck anyway, and they're not going to convince a kid to leave Notre Dame. Like, let's be honest. They all know who Kedron Young is already. There are teams already trying to get Kedron Young to leave. Me talking about it, or John Bryce talking about it, or anybody else in the media, Eric Hansen talking about it, is not going to now say, oh, wait, we should go look at this kid because I watched some videos of him going through individual drills. If a guy doesn't look good going through individual drills at a D1 school, he shouldn't be on scholarship. They're just not going to learn anything about that. That's why NFL teams let people come to their practices. It's a freaking practice. You're not going to learn anything about what we're doing, what our third down tendencies are by doing this. It's just they want to limit access anyway. Now they just have this as their excuse to do it. Like, do you really think that Georgia is going to read our practice reports and watch our podcast and then use that to determine who they want to take from the Notre Dame roster? No, and every big school already knows that. And any small school who doesn't know that isn't getting a guy from Notre Dame. It's like, hey, I wasn't going to recruit Kenny Minchie because I'd never heard of him before, but this Driscoll dude's really high on him, so let's go try to flip him in the portal. Like, seriously, do you really think that's happening? Of course not. In any school that's that inept that they need our practice reports to pursue a kid isn't going to get a kid from Notre Dame to come there anyway, or any other big school. Come on. That's just their excuses. I mean, look, people in positions of power always use dumb excuses to try to limit access to what they do. Well, this is about national security. No, it's not. It's about you don't want us all to know the bull crap that you're doing. We don't want people to try to take our kids in the portal. Really? Really? Look, I know we're a paranoid bunch as college coaches, but really? Really? Like, some school is going to not know who your best players are, and they're going to try to take them. Come on, man. Give me a break. That's not what it's about. It's just the excuse that people are using to limit access to people they don't want there anyway. That's what it is. And it's not a dislike of us per se. It's more of we just don't want to have to deal with that hassle. I want to be able to coach however I want to coach. I want to be able to talk everyone, because coaches are going to somewhat, because here's the problem that I have. What I would rather say is, hey, don't report on certain things. If you want to be here, don't report about how foul the O-line coach's language is. Like, that's not necessary. I don't Marcus Freeman ripping his team at the end of practice. It's not necessary. I actually had a Notre Dame staffer one time several years ago say, hey, Bryan, you got pretty detailed in your breakdown of what we did. Could you not do that? And I'm like, okay. And he explained why. And I was like, yeah, it makes total sense. Like, I want to have access. All they're asking me to do is not to detail breakdown like a coach all the pass schemes they were working on in practice. Fair. That's very fair for them to say that. And that's why we don't get as specific now in the scheme that we see in practice. Tell us that. Like, one thing I saw reported during the playoff was Notre Dame was working on slot fades of the tight end in the red zone. Like, why are you reporting that? Like, seriously, why are you reporting that? That's why they limit our access. But here's my thing. Just tell us you don't want this, this, and this. Tell us we're only allowed to talk about this and this and this, and then allow us to see more. And if somebody breaks those rules, take their credential away. Simple as that. And that would be great. But let's be honest, man. Part of like I said, they don't want us there. Part of it I understand, because there's always people breaking rules. Don't report about injuries. And what happens? Some dude, I accidentally tweeted a thing about a kid who's not at practice or was injured. Dude, you knew what you were doing, but you just wanted to get that clicks. You wanted to get those clicks out there. You wanted to make a name for yourself. And that's partly it too. It's our fault also, because we have so many people that want to push the boundaries and get stuff that's going to get those clicks, and report stuff that's going to get those clicks, even though it's a detriment to A, the team that you cover, and B, our potential for future access. So part of it's on us too, as a media. And, that's just that it all goes together, Trev, as to why, like, they're going to limit our access. I understand it to a degree, but it's not this. It's not like we were going to get 9 practice availabilities, but because of NIL and this, they're only going to limit us to have 3. Because at the end of the day, if it was about that, Notre Dame won't let us be at the Jersey scrimmage.
True.
Which we're allowed to. That's the most we're going to learn about, is at the Jersey scrimmage. So I just think it's about that. But as I said, knowing some of the issues that the Notre Dame media department has had to deal with from our side, the bull crap some people that cover this team have tried to pull that are covering practice, I kind of get it in that regard too. I just wish their answer to that was, okay, here's the rule. We're going to give you all this access, but here's the rules. If you agree to come, you're agreeing to these rules. If you violate these rules, your credential is pulled. Or you could even say, I'm going to pull the credential for you and all your people that work for you or part of your network. So, like, if Trevor, you go to practice and you tweet something that we're not allowed to tweet, then Irish Breakdown loses access. If that's the threat, then what am I going to make sure that I, as the boss, do before we go? This is what you are allowed to not to do. And if you do something that gets our access pulled, just know that there's going to be consequences and repercussions to that. And then that's up to me as the owner to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. And if one of my people or I break those rules, and guess what? Everybody else is going to be at the next practice, but Irish Breakdown won't. That'd be a simple way to kind of get this done, is like put some teeth to it. Because here's the thing. Some of the people that cover the team don't want to go to practice. So, of course, they're not going to care about losing practice access. So they don't care about breaking some rule. But then you don't have to go. Or if you break rules, and don't let them go, but let the others see more. And sometimes, hey, look, guys, we're going to let you be at this practice, but you can't report from it. Can't report anything from it. Okay, I would sign up for that in a heartbeat. I just want to watch this team compete. I want to see this team evolve over the course of the spring. If you told me, Brian, you could be at every practice, but you can only report on 2 of them, I'd be like, sign me up. Can't even hint about it in shows. Cool, sign me up. I just want to see this team develop, and it's an unfortunate part that we don't get to see more of that. But some of it's on Notre Dame, and some of it's on us. Let's be real. Some of that's on us. You see some of the stuff that people put out, and you're like, and this is why they don't let us have more access to practice, because of this crap right here. And it's usually the same outlet. It's the same 2 outlets that are always the ones guilty of it. Here's a good one, Trev. Rob Osgood asks, besides quarterback, which position is most up in the air this spring?
Ooh. We talked about right guard. I think that is, and again, like I said, you could make the argument for either guard position depending on what they want to do with Billy Schrouth. So call it for what it is. I would say guard, most likely right guard. I would say, gosh, some of them it's a little bit further down on the depth chart. I have no idea what's going to happen with the second string tight end. I don't really know what some of the defensive line rotation is going to look like. I have ideas. I think one of them that's going to be interesting is field receiver, because Jordan Faison is playing lacrosse right now. Will Pauling is going to be limited, and he played a lot of slot at Wisconsin anyways.
So it's 95% of his snaps are in the slot. Yeah.
Yeah. Is KK Smith going to remain healthy and put on some weight to be able to play at that level consistently? Is Cam Williams going to take that next jump? Can Micah Gilbert play a little bit of the field with Malachi Fields on the field as well? I think that's going to be an interesting one. There's others, especially on defense, it's a little bit more tough because it's just going to be so much of a rotation. Like I want to talk about Will linebacker, but again, at the end of the spring, if you told me that it's Kingston, I'd be like, cool, let's roll. If you told me it was Jaden Osbury, cool, let's roll. Told me it was Jalen Snead, cool, let's roll. It's a little bit of that.
Yeah, that one's interesting, Trev, because we don't know who the starter is going to be, but it's almost like I don't care. I'm going to have an article about it this next week where I'm going to talk about what it means, but like they're all going to play. Yeah. Whether Kingston's out there first or Jaden Osbury's out there first or Jalen Snead's out there first, they're all 3 going to play. Yeah. Somewhere. I like that outside receiver one. I would say for me, it's going to be who the 5 are on the offensive line and that second safety spot. Like, I think those are because like linebacker, we know who the candidates are and all of them are going to play. Some of the guys battling for the safety job are going to end up being left out when we get to the rotation in the fall. Yeah. And because Jalen Stroman is out, I think that makes it most up in the air because the guy that I would say is the leading contender to start won't even practice this spring. Yeah. So it's almost like the spring is a competition to see who gets to battle Jalen Stroman in the fall. It's almost like a gladiators. Did you ever watch that? It was probably before your time. Like you had to go against all these other gladiators to have a shot to go against like the gladiator in the final competition, right? I mean, it's almost kind of like that. I got to get through all these guys to get to the number 1 seed, so to speak. Yeah. That's pretty up in the air. And it's like, there's a question down here that Shaquille Oatmeal asked that kind of ties into this a little bit, Trev. He says, who do you think this year's interior offensive line will or should be better than 2012? And I'm like, my initial answer is yes, but there's my but I don't even know who's going to be the interior offensive line. Is Ashton Craig going to start at center or not? Is he going to be healthy enough to kind of win that job back? Is Jagasol and Schrouth going to be your guards? Is it going to be Schrouth and Knapp? Is it going to be Schrouth and Craig because somebody else moves to center? Is it going to be Schrouth and Sullivan Absher? Is it going to be Schrouth and Gerby Lambert? Is it going to be Schrouth and Emil Wagner? I mean, who is going to be the interior? I don't know the answer to that. I will say this, the combination of if Craig is back healthy and with Schrouth taking over, there's the potential for this interior to be the best we've seen since 2017. It won't be as good as the 2017 interior, but like if it's Jagasol, if it's Absher, if it's even Knapp, I'm going to look at this interior and say it's got a chance to be really good. Because like you got to look at Anthony Knapp differently than your normal 294-pound guy. Because like Anthony Knapp had like the complete opposite season of what you'd expect a 6'4", 294-pound guy to be.
Honestly,
You'd expect that guy to be a really technically sound pass pro guy that's athletic and all that. And Anthony is athletic, but wasn't very good in pass pro. Just not comfortable in space. You don't expect a 6'4", 294-pound true freshman to be dominant at times in the run game. And he was dominant in the run game. Like he was never their best offensive lineman ever. I don't know that there's a single game where he was definitively their best lineman. I've said this before. But here's what I do know. There were times when he certainly was their best run blocker.
Yeah.
And not just in a game, but in a stretch of games. I just think how bad he was in pass pro countered that to a certain degree, which is my issue. You put him at guard or center, and I'm like, I don't have to worry about that as much because he's playing in tight quarters and we're more comfortable. But, yeah, I'd expect that to be a really good interior. Really good interior. Is it going to be as good as the 2020 group? Wait and see. Is it going to be as good as the 2017 group? Wait and see. But there's the potential. Like if somebody's so good at left tackle that they just feel like they feel comfortable moving Jagasol inside and it's Jagasol, Schrouth, and whoever at center, I'm like, that's going to be a pretty darn good freaking interior. You know what makes me think that? I watched the Orange Bowl. That's what makes me think that. I saw half a football of Jagasol with 2 weeks of practice at guard and Schrouth and then Pat Coogan. And then I watched that second half where they're just whooping Penn State's defensive line. That's what makes me think that.
Yeah.
So it's got a shot to be, but like to the original question about open spots, I don't even know who's going to play inside right now. I have an idea of who I think it might be. We don't really know. That and safety to me are the two biggest unknowns this spring. Here's an interesting one, Trev, from Tom. Says, if Notre Dame and Ohio State can maintain postseason success, do you see an Ohio State-Notre Dame rivalry becoming formalized? Now, my first thing is, Trev, is what does formalized mean? Does that mean that Notre Dame and Ohio State formally schedule each other? If that is the question, then I would say no. But let's answer this question from the standpoint, Trevor, of a rivalry that forms in a similar fashion to what Alabama and Clemson had. For that period from 15 till like 20, where it's formalized means just it's a battle on the trenches. It's a battle between fan bases. It's these two teams are annual contenders. And every year at some point in time, Ohio State and Clemson are going to play each other in the postseason. And Alabama and Clemson are going to play each other in the postseason. And that's how that rivalry kind of forms. If that's what we're talking about by formalized, Trevor, then I say yes. What say you? Because I think these teams are both going to be in contenders for championships. What say you?
Yeah, down the road, I could and when I mean down the road, I mean very soon down the road. Could even be this year. I think that you look at, if you're an Ohio State fan, Notre Dame is one of the teams in the postseason that you say, hey, we got to get through them if we want to win a national championship. And I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, especially now, Ohio State is the team that you need to get through to win a national championship. And I think that that could become that form of a formalized rivalry of, in the same vicinity, like of the country. Clemson and Alabama weren't really, but like Clemson's still, they're in South Carolina. Alabama's in the South, obviously. And that was just that was kind of it. It was whether it's in the quarterfinals, whether it's in the semifinals or in the national championship game itself, I think you're going to start seeing that one of the two fan bases is going to sit back by saying, all right, yeah, we got to get through insert other team here. We have to get through them if we want to make it to the semis, if we want to win the Natty, if we want to make it through the quarterfinals. And so, yeah, I could absolutely see that. You start to see that a little bit. You see it in other sports too. You've seen it historically. I mean, for the Bengals right now, I mean, it's when they're healthy. It's, you kind of have to go through the Chiefs. The Bengals are the only team in the postseason that have went into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs to make it to the Super Bowl. And so that's kind of shades of that. I could see that a little bit. It's, like the Colts and the Patriots
that's
in the early
Bills.
2000s.
The Bills and the Chiefs are that way now, Trev. And then right now, Notre Dame's the Bills. And that they can't beat Notre Dame. They can't beat the Chiefs. They can't beat Ohio State. I would love to see a regular season rivalry with Clemson and a postseason recruiting rivalry with Ohio State be formed. I don't care about playing Ohio State in the regular season. I don't. Because if these two teams are what we think they are, then they're going to play each other in the postseason at some point in time, whether it's in the quarters, the semis, or the championship game. They're going to get that. I don't want to play them twice. It's just because I don't care about football is not a sport where you should play a team twice in college. I just don't want to see that. But you're going to see that. But playing Clemson in the regular season and then playing Ohio State in the postseason, if that becomes a regular thing, meaning like over the course of 5 years, we see that 3 times, heck yeah.
Be awesome.
Heck yeah. Well, I'd love to see that.
I think both teams are always going to be very aware of where each team is on the bracket.
Which is why there was only one team that tweeted at Notre Dame during Pot of Gold.
Yeah, facts.
It's the one team that views them. That's the team that has what it takes to potentially rival us in the Midwest on the recruiting trail and on the field. So take your shots when you can. Absolutely. Shaquille O'Neal on Archer's point. In the next 10 years, would you rather win 3 championships and be an occasional top 10 team, or top 3 consistently but win just 2 championships? I asked, taking the future into account. This is a tough one, Trevor, because part of me wants to win more championships, but if in a course of 10 years, you're only great 3 times, but then there's a lot of disappointing seasons as opposed to you're always really good. It's basically, do you want to be Florida State in the 90s or LSU from, in the 2010s? Where it's like Florida State only won, or LSU just really from Saban to Ed Orgeron. Like, okay, they won 3 titles from 04 or 03 to 19. They won 3 titles, right? They won it in 03, 07, and 19. There's a lot of crap years in there too. Just incredibly disappointing. Or do you want to be Florida State of the 90s where you only, quote unquote, only won 2 titles, but you're a top 5 team every year? Part of me would, as a fan, would rather do that because then there's not as much of the emotional roller coaster. You're always enjoying the team. You're always there, and I still get 2 titles. The question that would be harder to answer for me, Trev, is would you rather be consistently a top 5 to 10 team, but you don't win a championship or you only win 1? Or a team that's wildly erratic, but you win 3 titles? That would be a little tougher answer for me. But if you're talking about a difference of 1 title, but just a decade of just pure joy, I'd rather take that than, yeah, I got my 3 rings compared to 2, but I also had to deal with that 7-5 year that was just miserable, and that 8-4 year where that was just miserable. Like that's an easier one for me. If it was only 1 title or no titles, but just consistently like Florida State in the 80s, that'd be a little tougher one to decide, to be honest with you. But 3 versus 2, I think that's kind of an easy one for me. I'll take the latter.
This is a very easy, because here's the thing. You start talking about the narratives of the team and the program that did the first part, right? In the next 10 years, you win 3 natties, but you're an occasional top 10 team. When I hear that, I think of the only time you're in the top 10 is when you win the national championship. If you're an occasional top 10 team over 10 years. But if you are consistently, if you're consistently in the top 3, and then you win to win one every year, and that's where I absolutely separate that. So yeah, give me the
all
ladder.
The people in the chat that are saying they'd take the 3. I get that. I do. I'm not saying you're wrong, but my pushback is going to be, but you're going to be super miserable those years you're living through a 6-6 season like LSU fans were.
Yeah, because
you're still winning multiple championships.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like one less to have a lot of angst That's the tough thing. I mean, that's the thing for me, Trev, is like, I don't want to have to deal with the 6 and 6 and 7 and 5s. And maybe that's just maybe now here's where I'll give him. This also could be because I'm looking at it from a different perspective, because as a business owner of a Notre Dame site, I have to then take the brunt of the thousands of complaints and people going nuts on Twitter and in the channel and on the message board, during those 8 and 4, 7 and 5 seasons. And for some of you just get to check out during those seasons and then love it when they're good. I can't do that. So that also could be why maybe there's a bit, because like in the chat, it's like everybody's like, give me the 3, give me the 3, give me the 3. And you were like, no brainer, give me the 2.
Well, and I answered that as a fan, because I would sit there and I would think, like, even before I started doing work with Irish Breakdown, before I started working with you, and I would not want to be in a world where I could go 14-2 and win a natty, and then there's a good chance the next season I go 8-5, ranked 20th. Like, right. I can't, because every single year I'd be walking away. It's like, how is this the same team? Because odds are, I mean, because you start diving into the world of college football and how it is right now, it's like that means one of two things. One, the coaching staff is wildly erratic and you're solely relying on transfer portal talent. And that, to me, in the first part means that you just every single year you have a completely brand new team, and 3 out of those 10 years those teams hit. I do not want to endure that. I don't. Like, I would much rather be, all right, they are consistently 1, 2, or 3 in the country. And because it sounds like to me the way that I'm reading this is, in the first part, it's the only time I play in the national championship game, I win it. But in the other scenario, it's like, I mean, Notre Dame could be playing for them 4 or 5 times and they win 2 of them. I mean, I'd rather watch that than have some years where it's like, yeah, they were 6 and 6. They just weren't that good. How are they going to be next year? I don't know. They could win it all, or they could go 6
right. Right. That's called being an LSU fan for 15 years or whatever. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like they go 15-0 and have this miraculous season in 2019. But what were they the next year? Like 5-5, and 2 years later their coach is fired.
Yeah.
So it's pretty wild. Pretty wild. I'd rather take I'd rather be Florida State of the 90s than LSU from 03 to 2019, basically. Quick questions here. Beefeater, Indy 08, Bryan Trevor, any Jerry Tillery candidates to move from O-line to D-line? No. There aren't any guys that have that. There's no need for that. It's develop the guys that you have on the roster. Notre Dame's got there's 10 deep at D-tackle. There's plenty of bodies there. You just got to develop them, and guys got to step up and play better. It's as simple as that. Sly Fox 110404. Brian, do you like Cam Herron's film at center? I like parts of his film. I mean, he's got super long arms. He's really powerful at the point of attack. He's got good vertical explosion, which is why center is where I think he's most comfortable. He plays with good pad. He has good natural leverage, although he needs to improve playing with good pad level. He doesn't play with good pad level, but it's kind of like he has to be really high out of a stance to lose leverage because he's really short, which I don't care about at center. And in some ways, being 6'2" with it can help you. He has a frame where his weight will be fine eventually, if it sooner rather than later. I mean, but here's my long-term concern with him: he doesn't have great lateral speed. I want how good we be on the second level in space. Some of those things are a question mark, but with a center, you don't have to pull your center. You don't. You can just leave him right there blocking the A gaps. Working to the second level, there's things you can do to teach him to be better than that. So there's a lot of things I like. I mean, I think I gave him a 4-star upside grade coming out of high school. So there's definitely some things to like. He's going to have to put on some weight. He's going to have to get more comfortable snapping. He's a little inconsistent as a snapper, which you expect from a guy that played everywhere on his offense. He played tackle, guard, and center in high school. And sometimes it would change from week to week. As he gets play center every week or every day at Notre Dame, he'll get better and better at that, and he'll be fine snapping. But there's some work that needs to be done, and there's some things you got to be careful what you do play calling wise, because he's just not a guy you want to be, hey, let's have him, pull and get out to the corner. I don't know that that's necessarily something he's going to be great at. But if you're a team that can be good with a center just playing in a phone booth, that's a good phone booth player right there, man. And he's a lot more explosive vertically than he is laterally. Because he got really tight hips. But his vertical power is impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I saw him at camp last summer, and he's not real big. And they can tell me he's listed at whatever, but he's just not big. And he's going to have to, like you can even see like in 2012, Mike Golick, he was listed 300 pounds, but like you looked at him next to Braxton Cave, they were 5 pounds apart. Or you looked at him next to Zach Martin, who he weighed more than, and you're like, Zach Martin's bigger than he is. I don't care what the weight tells me. I'm just telling you, I'm looking with my own eyes, and that guy's not as big as that guy. Yeah. That's kind of the thing. That's my question mark for him. But there's some good things to like about him on film, Trev. I saw you shaking your head a lot, so I know that you've seen his film a lot. What were your thoughts on Cam Harris?
Same. He's tight hipped. He doesn't move well laterally, especially in comparison to him vertically. At center, I mean, it's the only fit for him in my eyes at the collegiate level.
I agree.
Just because of what Notre Dame likes to ask their guards to do with pin and pulls, with his size too. He has pretty long arms. He's quick off the ball, but he has a good punch, but it's not anything that I could see outside of the center position, I guess, if that makes sense.
He needs a lot of technical work.
Yeah.
Pad level, footwork, things like that. That's why I think I've said in the past, there is a pretty decent gap between what he is now and what he could be.
Oh,
with a lot of technical work. There's some tools to work with. And listen, whatever you feel about Kirk Ferentz as a head coach, the one thing that dude knows how to do is identify and develop really good offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
And they were super high on this kid. So you take that chance. And he projects, like you said, he projects as a true center, which is part of the reason Notre Dame went after him. It's because they wanted a guy that projected as a true center at the next level, and he does. Like Joe Otting fits best at center because of his size, but I could see Joe Otting playing guard. I could. Cam Herron's not playing because Joe's pretty athletic for his, for his build. Like you nailed it, Trev. He is a center. That's what he's going to play. Andrew Gilmore asks, could Carson Hobbs push Christian Gray? Gray makes plays, but he definitely got picked on by good passing attacks. He did, but what's to make us think that other guys wouldn't also, or even more so, or even have less success in those other minutes? Could Carson Hobbs push Christian Gray? Of course, any scholarship player at Notre Dame can push another scholarship player. It's unlikely that it happens unless Christian Gray regresses. If Christian Gray regresses, then Carson Hobbs could push him and beat him out. If Christian Gray gets hurt for an extended period of time, it could be a scenario where when he comes back, dude has stepped up and is, done really well. But just beating him out, the only way that happens to me is if Christian Gray mentally doesn't recover from what happened to him in the Ohio State game. I don't have no one said to me that they're concerned about that. That's the only way I see that happening. Carson Hobbs is a really good football player. I like Carson Hobbs. I wasn't super high on him as a junior. Loved his senior film. He's big, he's physical, he's fast. He's not as good as Christian Gray. He just isn't. And there's nothing that makes me, he wasn't better in high school. Yeah, but Christian struggled last year. We didn't see Carson Hobbs do anything last year, so we don't know what he can do. But I'm just telling you what people in the program tell me, that the issue with Christian Gray is just he's still a young, happy-go-lucky kid that's still learning how to compete and prepare and focus on a daily basis like what a top-level corner needs to do. That if he gets to that point, they think he can be elite. And not everybody in the program just assumes that Leonard Moore is going to be their best corner next year. I'm just telling you what people are telling me. I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm just telling you what people are telling me. I have a hard time saying that kid not starting unless he regresses.
It was also moments, guys. We got to understand this. Christian Gray was not a bum all season long. There was a point where people were claiming that 29 was a better corner last year than 20.
Right.
And look, I'll say this. Go back and watch the film because I've already gone back through and I've watched all of Notre Dame's regular season games, including the Northern Illinois one. And I started with that one because I didn't want to rehash it. But look, there is a direct correlation in the games where Christian Gray struggled in the lack of pass rush. There's a lack of a pass rush against Ohio State. Christian Gray struggled at certain moments. There was virtually no pass rush against USC. It's a game where Christian Gray struggled. What happened when they got a pass rush? A 99-yard pick six. Look, sometimes when you're a really good cover corner that plays press man, you're only as good as sometimes what the pass rush allows you to be. If a quarterback has all day to set up camp, you can only cover somebody for so long. And so it's all layered, but like, let's not forget that Christian Gray was a very good corner last year. We've been saying it before, like it's hard.
Season.
Yeah. And it's hard to track stats on a corner because there's zero things that show up for you on a stat sheet when you just play really good lockdown coverage, especially if you don't get targeted. And if you're playing good enough coverage, you're not going to get targeted. So like that's a lot of issues that people had with Ben Morrison at the start of the season. He was supposed to be this and he's regressed. And it's like, well, no,
but he hasn't.
No,
he had one bad game. He had a couple bad plays in the same game. The entire team sucked against Northern Illinois. The other thing too about Christian Gray is Christian is not nearly as technically proficient as Benjamin was at the same age, and is what Leonard Moore is now. Leonard Moore is a better technical corner than Christian Gray was. That's something Christian has to work on. You want to know why he gets grabby? Because he takes too many gambles. He takes too many risks. He doesn't transition his feet technically the way he needs to. There's a lot of room for him to improve technically, and when that happens and the talent takes over, he'll be better. There were times last year he got quote-unquote beat or got called for PI where it's like, dude, you're in perfect position. Trust what you're being taught to do. Trust your technique. He didn't do it. And so like this isn't sitting here saying like Christian Gray is a finished product and he was a great player outside of 4 plays. I'm not saying that. I don't think Trevor's saying that. But I also think that we've kind of overcorrected on our analysis of Christian Gray. But it could also be you just were really high on Carson Hobbs, and I get it. He's over 6 feet tall. He's fast. He's strong.
Moves.
And having a guy like Carson Hobbs on your depth chart is good because he will keep you, hey, you better stay locked in. Because if you do regress, you will find yourself getting beat out. Oh, yeah. Like if Christian Gray doesn't takes a step back this year because of whatever reason, Carson Hobbs could beat him out. There's no doubt in my mind. I'm not saying it's going to happen, I'm saying it can. But if Christian Gray just keeps doing his thing and just keep getting better every day, there's nobody else on the team that's going to challenge him. Somebody in the chat brought up a point, and I actually think this is I like what he's saying, and I agree with what he's saying. Joe Marciano said, I think Christian Gray should be in the boundary. I think he struggles more in open space. 100% agree. I think Leonard Moore could be elite on either side. I think Christian Gray's game is way better suited for the boundary. I mean, a year ago, we were talking about how he starts in field this year. When Benjamin leaves, he then transitions to the field spot or the boundary spot and takes over. Well, injuries forced Leonard into that role, but let's not forget where Leonard's first start came from. It was at field. And I thought he played pretty well that game as well. So I actually think that, Joe, you are correct, that if you're going to say where can they put Christian Gray where he's best suited, I think he's best suited to play in the boundary. There's less thinking for him to do, and he can just focus on playing man coverage. Yeah. I agree with that. I think Christian can play the field fine. I think Christian can be a very good field corner. I just think his best position is still boundary. And I think Leonard has more upside playing both spots. But at the end of the day, I think Mike Mickens has earned my trust that if he thinks it's best the way it is, it's best the way it is. It's going to be fine. He's earned that trust with me. Last couple before we get out of here, Trevor, Super Mario Henry, 1812, who only talks about tight ends. Do you think Notre Dame will push for Gavin Mueller? It's possible. It's possible. I think right now there's guys ahead of him, but, obviously they offered him, so there's a level of like there. But there's other guys on the board that are higher right now, including a big one that they got coming up this week. This weekend. I think it's the 21st. Ian Premer is going to be on campus on Friday. That's a big one. He's my number one tight end on the board. He's a dude. So I think they're going to see how things go with him. And Isaac Jensen is a guy they like a lot. And J.C. Anderson's a guy that's on the board. Evan Jacobson is a really good player that they like a lot. Obviously, Gavin Mueller. They also recently offered what is the kid from Utah's name? Give me a second. Was it Utah, Wyoming, Utah? Give me a second. Matt Ludwig, I think is the kid's name, but let me just find this real quick. They offered another kid that I like a lot. He's going to be visiting soon. I think he's another player that they like a lot. So they are recruiting him. He's on the board. I don't think he's a guy that right now they're pushing hard for. And then the last one, Trev, from Ghost X. I'm going to let you answer this first, Trev, because I'm very curious what you have to say. If all the quarterbacks, it's a good question, Ghost X. And by the way, I love the fact that you got Macho Man Randy Savage as your avatar.
Yeah.
That is freaking awesome. As a kid who grew up in the 80s, yes, sir, thank you. If all the quarterbacks have excellent springs and summer, which one's matured skill set fits Mike Denbrock's offense the best? And does the staff believe, and you believe the staff will confidently make a move in that direction? So if they all reach their mature game, who best fits Mike Denbrock's offense, number one? And then number two, do you think the staff would go in the direction of that player? Very curious to hear what you have to say about that, Trev.
This one's interesting. Because as of right now, I think just what history has shown us, the one if their skill set's completely matured, I think the best one whose skill set fits Denbrock's offense the best is Kenny Minchie, based on who he's had at former quarterback. Between Jaden Daniels, he had Riley Leonard this past season. Desmond Ridder was kind of a mobile guy, dual threat guy. And then when he was at Notre Dame before in the past, Everett was a dual threat kind of guy. Pass first. A lot of these guys were pass first, but they could move. Malik, Everett, Deshaun. So I would say at its peak, Kenny, because I think Kenny has the highest upside when it comes to being mobile. Not that the two other guys are stiffs, but I think Kenny is the most mobile of the three. Do I think the staff would confidently move in that direction if all of the quarterbacks do? I don't, because I think that if all quarterbacks have excellent springs and summers, meaning they all reach kind of like their max potential, I still think they go with one of Steve Angeli or CJ Carr. So that's where I'm at.
I think I'll say this, I love the answer, Trev, and most of it I agree with. I'll say this: if all three quarterbacks reach their full potential, the starting quarterback will be Kenny Minchie or CJ Carr. Like one of those two. Just because God-given ability, Steve's just not where those other two are. And matured skill set means that Kenny and CJ show the intangibles that we know Steve has. That's how I take that question. But I think if we're just talking about whose unique skill set best fits Mike Denbrock's offense, I don't disagree with you. I agree. I think it is Kenny Minchie. Because here's the thing. Mike Denbrock doesn't like a mobile quarterback, period, end of sentence. Mike Denbrock likes a guy that can throw and is also mobile. Mike Denbrock would not recruit a Desmond Ridder to Notre Dame. That's why if you look at like Malik was unique. He was not the typical quarterback that they recruited in that era. Everett was, Deshaun was, who were mobile guys, but they were more throwers who were mobile. They were going to do damage from the pocket. And Kenny is like that. Like there's this notion that everybody wants to talk about Kenny's mobility all of a sudden. I'm like, that's fine, and he's mobile, but let's not forget this kid can flat out spin it. And the thing that we were talking about with talking to sources coming from the Elite 11 that he participated in is there were people out there not affiliated with Notre Dame that were talking about this kid was as good as anybody, if not better than anybody on the board, just with the IQ part of it, just this mentally with his knowledge of the game. And that's why I say Kenny fits the offense very well and would be a great fit. If he wins the job, let's roll. I graded him as a top 100 player. This kid can flat out spin it. And if he wins the job, he will be a passing quarterback who's mobile. He won't be a dual threat quarterback. He'll be more, okay, bear with me because I'm talking about style. I'm not talking he's going to be as good. I'm talking about style. He'll be more Joe Burrow than he will be Riley Leonard. And what I mean by that is Joe Burrow was a pocket quarterback who rushed for like 500 yards and like 9 touchdowns. What was Joe Burrow's? Let me look at Joe Burrow's rushing numbers in 2019. Now, was Joe Burrow a dual threat quarterback? Not in the way we define dual threat quarterback, but he's a very mobile quarterback who had great pocket presence, could avoid sacks, and then could run. We need him to run. Yeah, 368 yards and 5 touchdowns is what Joe Burrow had in 2019. He had 399 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2018. So this is a guy that certainly could run. Kenny Minchey would be more Ian Book than he would be Riley Leonard if you want to use only Notre Dame quarterbacks, meaning Ian Book was not a guy they were doing a lot of designed runs for, but he could escape, he could run, he could scramble, he could hurt teams with his legs. That's Kenny. Kenny is a pocket passer who's athletic. And I think because he is an athletic kid, and I'll just say it, because he's black, there's this assumption that like people are trying to fit him into this dual threat runner type of thing. That's not Kenny Minchey. Kenny Minchey is a drop back quarterback who's athletic. He's a smart, strong-armed, athletic quarterback, passing quarterback who also happens to be really athletic. The flip side is we're also making assumptions about CJ Carr that he's just this drop back quarterback who's not mobile. He is. CJ and Kenny are a lot closer in skill set than people want to realize. And we can be honest about why some people view it that way. Not everybody. The other people know, most people in this chat know exactly who Kenny and CJ are. But I see a lot of this on Twitter especially, where you see this, Kenny's a runner. No, Kenny can run, but anybody that watched Kenny Minchey's high school film knows that cat wants to sit back in the pocket and sling that thing around. But if you have to get him on the run, he's got no problem getting on the run. And that's what I like about Kenny. But CJ's just like that too. We just haven't seen him do it because CJ was able to make better decisions and get the ball where it needs to get to. But I think it's fit. It's Kenny, slightly behind him is CJ, and then way behind them is Steve in regard to their game because Steve just doesn't have that feel in the pocket. He doesn't have the clean enough release, and the way he processes is just still not as good as those other two kids. They're just higher IQ players. Do I think he'll move in that direction? I'm with you. If Kenny maxes out his ability and CJ maxes out his ability, CJ's still the better player. But if Kenny maxes out his ability for where they are now and CJ doesn't, then Kenny absolutely has a shot to win the starting quarterback job. And I would have no problem with that. I've said this to you, Trev. How many times have I said to you privately, look, everybody knows I think CJ's the best, but as long as it's one of those two, I don't care. I don't. How many times have I said that to you privately? As long as it's one of those two, just give me one of those two, and I'm feeling this offense is going to be special because I think they're both great fits for what Mike Denbrock won, which is passer first, who's got a high football IQ, who also is mobile and can do damage when with his legs. He's not out there looking for the next Jaden Daniels, but if that guy comes, he'll freaking recruit him. But he doesn't need it, and that's kind of where I'm at. So that's it, Trev. So hey, man, why don't you take us out of here? Thanks. The great show, everybody. Went a little longer than we thought, but there's some really good questions at the end that we definitely wanted to get to. So really good stuff today, man. Enjoyed it very much. Enjoyed it very much. Why don't you take us out of here, Trev?
Yeah, you got it, man. I missed you guys. It was fun to be back. I was ready to get rolling today. Couldn't have came at a better time. I get to go up to see the first practice tomorrow. Really excited to do that. So it's going to be a week of first. But you guys know what to do. Before you head out of here, please be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this podcast with your friends and family, whichever platform that you watch us on, whether it's Spotify podcasts or Apple podcasts. We'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. And as always, the best way to support what we do here at Irish Breakdown, subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Bryan and I will be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We're going to give you guys a breakdown of the limited practice that we get to see, and it's buy-sell hold time. So go ahead and jump over into the Champions Lounge and make sure that you get your questions, your buy-sell holds submitted. But until tomorrow, that's Bryan. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.